The Dragon King of Annihilation sneered, and he immediately rushed forward, his huge body directly exposed from the surrounding magma. Even with endless flames on his body, Li Shuwen looked at the tit-for-tat scene between the two of them and spoke with interest. Elder Su, let's take a gamble and see who can win. Come on, I'll make a bet first. I'll kill the little fire dragon and beat up this guy Ao Zhan. After Li Shuwen said this, everyone around him had black lines on his forehead. They didn't expect this guy to be so ungrateful. It was in vain that Ao Xuan taught this guy this way before, and this guy actually sold Ao Zhan backhand. Are you so confident that you are not his opponent? What if there is a reversal? Su Han also had a helpless smile on his face. This guy has a really big heart. Well, Ao Zhan doesn't have Dragon Balls. How can his strength be compared with the big guy in front of him? Although Ao Zhan still has a little strength, he is incomparable to him now. If he has the Dragon Ball, it will be a different matter, Li Shuwen said. Then what do you want to bet on? Su Han said. What are you betting on? Hey, I don't know what I'm betting on. I don't seem to have anything to gamble with, and I have very few treasures. Speaking of this, Li Shuwen's eyes were full of confusion. You guy, there is really nothing I can do to you. Why can't you just calm down and watch this battle properly? Li Wuxiang came over at this time, with a helpless look on his face. Li Shuwen in front of him really didn't have any sense of crisis. You must know that if even Ao Zhan failed, it would prove that the Nirvana Dragon Jin in front of him was very powerful. Before they could finish speaking, the huge body in front of Ao Zhan seemed to be covered with flames. The blazing flames made Ao Zhan's body miserable, and his scales had been slightly scorched. And the Annihilation Dragon King said with a look of disdain on his face. The flame I carry is born from the earth. It is the spiritual fire of heaven and earth. No matter how strong your bloodline is, so what? You are not a body of flesh and blood. How long can you endure the roasting of my flame? Woolen cloth. Ao Zhan felt the hot pain on his body, and the look on his face became more fierce and ferocious, and he spoke. You guys have completely pissed me off. As he spoke, he roared angrily, and the terrifying dragon power from ancient times caused all the monsters around him to unconsciously lie down, as if they were surrendering to the king in front of him. Even the Dragon King of Annihilation in front of him, the dragon blood in his body began to boil, but not because of excitement, but because of fear of the king of the dragon clan in front of him. I won't lose, so what if you are a real dragon? It's just a dragon without Dragon Balls. The worst is, I don't want the blood of this dragon clan today. Even if I transform into a part of the spiritual fire of heaven and earth, I still have to make you pay the price for your pride. And let me tell you, the noble dragon clan will not follow a person without dignity like this. You are a shame to the dragon clan. The Nirvana Dragon King spoke angrily at this time. After hearing this sentence, Ao Zhan in front of him seemed to have completely lost his mind. It seemed that this sentence hit his pain point. This also made him become violent. Only his dragon whiskers were seen floating in the sky, and his eyes became very violent. The scarlet eyes combined with the terrifying dragon power made all the monsters around unconsciously lie down and surrender. The Nirvana Dragon King in front of him couldn't help but have a look of fear on his face when he saw Ao Zhan with such a powerful momentum. He also seemed to realize that he had completely angered Ao Xuan in front of him, and now he was ready to fight the enemy in front of him. Dragon Clan's secret technique, the power of chaos. Following Ao Zhan's roar in front of him, the aura around him suddenly changed greatly. I only saw that the sky that was originally yesterday was actually raining heavily at this moment. The heavy rain seemed to be extinguishing all the magma on the volcano. This is the innate talent of the Dragon Clan, which is to call the wind and rain. And the volcano seemed to be less scorching after the heavy rain. The hot breath slowly dissipated, but the face of the Nirvana Dragon King in front of him suddenly changed drastically at this moment. He could feel that the power in his body was being continuously weakened. He looked at Ao Zhan in front of him with a look of resentment on his face and said, You guy, how do you know? Why can't I know? I'm telling you, this is just the beginning. Ao Zhan's face showed a sneer at this time. Boom. The sky suddenly thundered loudly, and all the purple thunder struck the body of the Dragon King of Annihilation with clear targets, leaving a huge gash in his red body. The Dragon King of Annihilation felt that the power on his body was being continuously weakened, and he felt the pain left by the thunderbolt just now. You damn guy, you obviously don't have the Dragon Balls. Why can you still do this? You've obviously had so much power taken away. The Dragon King of Annihilation looked at his injured body and said angrily. As his anger continued to rise, the entire volcano suddenly began to wake up from silence and was on the verge of erupting. At this time, the magma all over the sky began to boil, and it kept erupting towards the surrounding area. The volcano that seemed to be sleeping due to the heavy rain slowly woke up again, and the hot breath quickly spread out. His strength was strengthened again, and at this moment, the Dragon King of Annihilation rushed forward. He knew that he could no longer give Ao Zhan a chance. Now that he was in the opponent's rhythm, he had to reverse it and give himself the upper hand. Otherwise, if this continued, he would only become a defeated opponent. Haha. Can't you bear it after all? You really make me unhappy, Ao Zhan sneered. As he spoke, he flew his huge body into the sky and began to fight hand to hand with the Dragon King of Annihilation, biting each other. This fierce battle situation made everyone watching below relish this moment. This battle is really interesting to watch. I didn't expect this guy to be able to do this without the Dragon Balls. I really underestimated him. Sure enough, it is not unreasonable to beat me so badly. It seems that I am still very strong. Li Shuwen's brain was working rapidly, and after a moment she said excitedly. Although on the surface he seemed to recognize Ao Zhan's strength, everyone around him saw his self-praising look, and their foreheads were all covered with black lines at this time. Come on, you guy. Don't you know how many times you were beaten by that senior along the way? This is the time when that senior stopped his hand and beat you. Otherwise, your soul would have died in the West. Li Wuxiang had a look of disdain on his face and looked at Li Shuwen in front of him. After Li Shuwen heard this sentence, he spoke very shamelessly. So what's the matter? He may not be able to beat me to death. My body is so strong, is so tenacious that he won't kill me so easily, but I have to admit that this guy to be able to be so powerful without the Dragon Balls is indeed worthy of being the one who taught me. At this time, Su Han looked at the two dragons that were constantly fighting in the sky. On one side, there was lightning and thunder, and the wind and rain were swaying, while on the other side, the burning atmosphere and the erupting volcano were like a natural disaster. Everyone looked at this spectacular scene and couldn't help but be filled with emotion. This is the strength of the superior, it is really unbelievable. Wang Tianwan showed a look of yearning on his face. Such a strong man is what he truly yearns for. This strong man is what he truly respects. This is just the slightest bit of strength shown by the other party. At this time, the battle was almost coming to an end. The two rounds were constantly biting each other in the sky. They seemed to be evenly matched, with neither side giving in. Almost over. Su Han narrowed his eyes slightly, stared at the scene in the sky, and said slowly. After hearing this sentence, everyone showed a look of doubt on their faces and spoke. It's not that fast. I think they are still fighting hard. It's almost over, the winner is about to be decided, but I'm also a little curious about who will win this game, Su Han said. At this moment, the Dragon King of Annihilation suddenly fell high from the sky, his eyes full of anger and helplessness. He knew that the guy in front of him had dragon blood that was much richer than his own. He was just a hybrid, while the other person was a true pure-blooded dragon. The other person could easily master the dragon's power and dragon secrets, but he couldn't. He just relied on the spiritual body he was born with, and the other party didn't have Dragon Balls, so he was able to gain the upper hand just now. As the imminent Dragon King fell from the sky, the volcano seemed to be completely extinguished. It seemed that there was no power left for him to use. Its body directly smashed a huge hole into the ground. At this moment, he looked at the people in front of him with serious injuries. But Ao Zhan was also very unhappy at this time. He was also seriously injured. Most of the large and small wounds on his body were burned by the blazing flames. Ao Zhan came to him and transformed into a human form again. His human form was very small in front of the Nirvana Dragon King, but he had a distinguished look on his face. Even though he was covered in scars, even though he was in a terrible state, he still didn't look at the Dragon King of Annihilation in front of him. You have lost. You just have a trace of dragon blood and you want to call yourself a dragon. You are still far from achieving this. You are just a bonus of this flame. You are just a bonus of this ball of fire. What qualifications do you think you have to compare with me? This is just a shred of my strength. If my Dragon Ball returns to its place, do you think you can stop it? Shall I make a move? Ao Zhan sneered. The Nirvana Dragon King in front of him suddenly laughed after hearing this sentence. Ha 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 ha, you are right, you are really right. I am just a guy born by chance. I am just a bonus of this ball of fire. But today this bonus will give you all illusions are annihilated. A crazy smile appeared on the face of the Dragon King of Annihilation, and the flames on his body suddenly burst out again. And the ball of Nirvana Dragon Flame in Su Han's hand seemed to suddenly come to life. Even Su Han couldn't catch this ball of flame, and could only watch helplessly as the ball of Nirvana Dragon Flame in front of him suddenly ran in front of the Nirvana Dragon King. When everyone reacted, they saw the Nirvana Dragon King swallowing the Nirvana Dragon Flame in one gulp. Everyone looked at this scene with shocked expressions on their faces. Damn guy, you can't even calm down before you die. What do you want to do? Li Shuwen said angrily. At this moment, the body of the Nirvana Dragon King suddenly changed dramatically, and his thick dragon scales suddenly had cracks. The cracks have been all over his huge head, and there is a little flame in the cracks that is almost flowing out. The Nirvana Dragon King seems to have been severely injured at this time. He was howling in pain, as if the flames entered his body, making him feel full of pain, making him very uncomfortable. But his body was full of destructive power, which was obviously brought to him by the ball of Nirvana Dragon Flame. At this moment, the Dragon King of Annihilation suddenly soared high into the sky, his eyes full of madness, and he said, "You forced me to do this. Don't you just want that flame? I was born with him. Since you want him, I won't give it to you. I will be his enemy. I want him to be a part of me. Don't talk nonsense here, and don't you guys know your current situation? Do you think you have the qualifications to let him become a part of you? He is the real soul of heaven and earth. You just a self-aware spiritual creature of heaven and earth that was born around him. If it weren't for that trace of dragon essence and blood, how would you have the qualifications to be born with self-awareness? How would you have the qualifications to be the king and hegemon in this place? In the final analysis, you still eat the benefits of my dragon clan." Ao Zhan sneered. "Ha ha 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 ha. Maybe you were right, but so what? It doesn't matter if you look down on me now. Later you will watch helplessly everything that belongs to you is wiped out, and even this world will be destroyed by me." The flames burned away a corner. The Dragon King of Annihilation laughed heartily, and there was even a hint of scarlet in the corners of his eyes. He was completely crazy. After swallowing the ball of Nirvana Dragon Flame, his body became more and more scorching, and he seemed to be able to feel that the countless power in his body was about to be released immediately. At this moment, the Dragon King of Annihilation in front of him suddenly opened his mouth, and a ball of scorching flames spurted out from his mouth. Everything around the volcano was completely burned to pieces by the blazing flames, and the sky was filled with black ash smoke. And this Dragon King of Annihilation seemed to have gone completely crazy. His eyes were red and he fell into complete rage. Everything in front of him will be burned to ashes. At this time, the people standing below him will naturally become his first attack point. The endless flames spurted out from his mouth, and the violent power almost destroyed the entire world. At this time, the people below immediately fled in all directions. Li Shuwen looked at the Dragon King of Annihilation, who was spraying flames crazily in the sky, with a look of fear on his face. What's going on with this guy? Why is he so crazy? What does he want to do? Does he want to burn us all to ashes? Want to bring us all down? Li Shuwen said with lingering fear that he could feel the heat of the flames. Just a little bit of it will cause serious injuries to his body. The Nirvana Dragon Flame is indeed not covered. No wonder this guy has been guarding the Nirvana Dragon Flame for so long and dare not swallow it. It turns out that the power of the Nirvana Dragon Flame is too violent. His current strength is not enough to refine it, and it is impossible to completely tame him. So he can only keep improving his strength while guarding, but how can his strength be improved so quickly? How could he be so crazy if there was really no other way out? However, Su Han knew very well in his heart that although the Dragon King of Annihilation in front of him looked very powerful, he was actually at the end of his strength. It won't be long before the Nirvana Dragon Flame will completely destroy his body. Su Han looked back and saw that a violent force in the sky was attacking indiscriminately, and the volcanoes were turbulent. Ha 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 ha. Go to hell. The Nirvana Dragon King spoke freely at this moment, saying that he felt as if there was endless power in his body, but he could also feel that his body, it seems that it is about to be unable to withstand the power of the Nirvana Dragon Flame. Quickly think of a way. If we let this guy continue like this, I'm afraid we won't be able to escape his clutches. This guy has gone completely crazy now. He won't stop until he kills us. Li Shuwen felt this extremely powerful pressure and said anxiously that he was indeed a little scared. The Nirvana Dragon King was already red-eyed at this moment, and he didn't take everything seriously at all. This guy now wants to destroy everything, because they can see that the Nirvana Dragon King has been swallowed, and there seems to be little time left to live after the ball of Nirvana Dragon Flame. It seems that things are going very badly. This guy is completely impatient. I didn't expect that just these 2 sentences would break his mentality. This guy is really too young and has little mental endurance. No ability at all. Ao Zhan shook his head at this time, with a look of helplessness and contempt on his face. After this guy said a few words to him, his mentality completely collapsed and he even wanted to die with them. If you lose, you lose. Since you lose, you have to accept the punishment obediently. Who would have thought that this guy couldn't help scolding, and he was about to swallow the Nirvana Dragon Flame into his belly at this moment. He even risked his own life in order to drag them all down. It seemed that this guy couldn't stay. Hey, is there any way to get rid of this guy? Keeping this guy alive will be a disaster. Ao Zhan said to Su Han next to him at this time. Don't you have great powers? Why do you still need my help? You were so brave just now. Li Shuwen said it before Su Han could speak. Ao Zhan rolled his eyes at him, but didn't say anything, just waiting for Su Han to speak. I only saw the Dragon King of Nirvana in front of me. The cracks on his huge body were becoming more and more obvious, as if his entire body was about to be torn apart. But the extremely hot magma in the middle of the crack daunted everyone. Now he is like a huge beast coming out of this volcano. The violent flames were spitting out from his mouth mercilessly, as if he was going to burn the entire world. Ha 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 ha, die, all of you die, you guys don't even think of surviving, ha 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 ha. The Dragon King of Annihilation in front of him had completely fallen into madness at this time. Under his push, the volcano became more and more violent, and the magma began to spray in all directions. The Nirvana Dragon King's consciousness at this moment will be completely replaced by the Nirvana Dragon Flame, turning into a killing machine without any emotion, brutally killing all living creatures around it. At this time, everyone around looked at this scene with solemn expressions on their faces. All the monsters near the volcano also fled. They could feel that this volcano that had been standing here for a long time was coming to an end, showing his truly angry side. It's all over now. The eruption of this volcano is inevitable. Even if I use my own abilities, I can't stop it. These flames are too violent. Li Wuxiang looked helpless. He spoke. I didn't know that this guy's mind was so fragile. I just said a few words to him. It seems that he is planning to fight us to death. This guy is really, didn't he just beat him up and then take away the spiritual fire he was guarding? Why are you so stingy? Ao Zhan curled his lips and said speechlessly. Don't worry, don't look at what you have done. He was born with the Nirvana Dragon Flame. It is estimated that he has thought of many ways before this to completely eliminate the Nirvana Dragon Flame. Refining, but failed to do it. After all, the energy contained in this Nirvana Dragon Rock is too violent. Now that this guy has completely swallowed this Nirvana Dragon Rock, the power of the volcano he is in will become more and more violent. You have completely pissed him off. Ida is so hairy. Li Shuwen curled her lips and said with a look of disdain on her face. After listening to Li Shuwen's words, Ao Zhan in front of him immediately rushed over and punched Li Shuwen. This punch directly made Li Shuwen dizzy, and Ao Zhan said helplessly. Who allowed this guy to insult me? Besides, I'm generous if I can spare his life. This guy really has no mental capacity at all. Ao Zhan looked at the scene in front of him and complained without any emotion in his heart. After hearing this sentence, everyone around them was angry and dared not speak, especially Wang Tianwan. He looked at Li Shuwen's dizzy appearance next to him and saw the big swollen bump on his head, closed his mouth. Although what Ao Zhan said was indeed a bit deserving of a beating, with his supreme strength that day, let alone beating him, with their current strength, even being able to touch him was considered lucky. Okay, let's think about how to get through this difficulty. This guy is going crazy now and wants to kill us all. Is there any good way to escape this disaster? After all, we know that we are on someone else's territory, it may not be that easy to leave. This guy has already set his sights on us. Su Han said helplessly, even he couldn't guarantee that he could escape with everyone intact. But if you are fighting such a crazy guy, you probably won't be able to take care of other people. And the Nirvana Dragon King in front of him has now completely fallen into a rage. He has only one idea now, which is to kill them all. Moreover, after he swallowed the Nirvana Dragon Flame, his own strength had risen to a terrifying level, and the volcano under his feet became even more violent. Yes, of course there is a way to kill this guy, right? As long as it is killed, all this will be solved, Ao Zhan said at this time. At this moment, a flame suddenly sprayed towards them, and the peaceful scene that had finally calmed down was broken again, and they were forced to separate. The Dragon King of Annihilation in the sky has completely locked onto them at this moment, and his eyes are on Ao Zhan. Although he only retained the last trace of reason, it seemed to be out of instinct and out of extreme hatred. His eyes were filled with hatred, and he looked at Ao Zhan with his teeth bared, as if he wanted to tear Ao Zhan apart. You damn guy, you deserve to die the most, you scum of the Dragon Clan, you lackey of humanity, I'm going to burn you to ashes first. The Nirvana Dragon King spoke angrily at this time. Function Lian. He slowly opened his big mouth, and at this time, a violent and endless force gathered in his mouth, and a ball of flames shot out directly from his mouth. Even the volcano was affected by the scorching temperature. A terrifying force cracked open a crack. At this time, Ao Zhan saw that he had been locked by the Nirvana Dragon King. He also knew that he had been filled with hatred. At this moment, he had a look of helplessness on his face and hurriedly dodged. You guy, tell me, you just hit a little harder and didn't take your life. Why are you so impatient? Besides, Who do you think is the scum of the dragon clan? Who do you think is the lackey of humans? Ao Zan's expression changed slightly at this time, and he sneered, but his eyes were still extremely disdainful. But the Dragon King of Annihilation in front of him could no longer listen to that much. He kept spraying out the hot and violent flames, and the power in his body seemed to be inexhaustible. Along with it, his body became increasingly dilapidated. It seemed that the powerful force was too much for his body to bear. After spraying this scorching flame, the Dragon King of Annihilation in front of him stopped his movements. He coughed out blood, and his body became extremely weak. At this moment, his body seemed to have reached its limit. Oh, I can't do it anymore. You still can't do it. It's only been so long and you can't stand it anymore. Ao Zan saw the Dragon King of Annihilation stopped in the sky. A smile appeared on his face, and he mocked again. After hearing this sentence, the Annihilation Dragon King suddenly became angry, and his eyes almost burst out with flames. He looked at Ao Zan in front of him and said, "You damn scum, you damn bastard, you have simply soiled the noble bloodline of the Dragon Clan. I'm going to bury all of you bastards here today." At this time, the Nirvana Dragon King in front of him flew high into the sky, his whole body fluttering in the sky, and the flames on his body became more and more scorching, and he was like a big sun in the sky. A second sun seemed to appear in the sky. When everyone saw this scene, a solemn look appeared on their faces. Hey, no, you guy, you really want to be like this? I just said a few words that shouldn't be said. You want to be like this. You want to get things done, and you also want to do it. It's not worth risking your own life. Ao Zan said while running away at this time. What the Dragon King of Annihilation swallowed was indeed a spiritual creature from heaven and earth, and the power displayed at this moment was also extremely terrifying. However, although Ao Zan does not have the Dragon Ball now and his strength is greatly reduced, he was also the strongest person 10,000 years ago. He has seen many people or mythical beasts with this kind of strength. Faced with such a hybrid dragon with impure blood, even though he was powerful, Ao Zan still did not take him seriously. But he could see that this guy seemed to be trying his best to keep his group here. What does this guy want to do? Can they want to die with us? At this time, Li Shuwen looked at the broken earth around her, at the violent volcano, and then at the Dragon King of Annihilation hovering in the sky like a second sun. He had a bad feeling in his heart. This guy seemed to want to take his own life and die with them. Be careful. This guy is going to fight hard. Su Han realized that something was wrong at this time, and his eyes immediately showed a heavy look. Then what should we do? How about running away quickly before this guy uses his ultimate move? Otherwise, I'm afraid we will be disabled even if he uses this move. Li Wuxiang was already a little worried at this time. After all, the aura exuded by the Nirvana Dragon King at this moment is too powerful, even more terrifying than the previous big demon. Then what are you waiting for? Run away quickly. If this guy really uses that trick, we have to finish it. But this guy is completely unreasonable now. Su Han couldn't care so much at this time, and he didn't expect that things would get out of control. The current Dragon King of Annihilation is completely out of control. Even with the strength of Tian Jijun, he may not be able to completely block it. The most important thing right now is to protect the people around him. The Dragon King of Annihilation is in this state now. Even if he encounters him, something big will happen, so the best way now is to escape to a safe place. After these words were spoken, these people immediately set off, leaving Ao Zan standing here alone in confusion. He looked at the Dragon King of Annihilation in the sky who had completely locked his hatred on him. His face gradually darkened and he spoke. You guys who were unloyal, I stood up for you, and now this guy is going crazy with me, and you just ran away like this. Why don't you run away and stay here? You guys should be faster. If this guy catches us again, we will be in big trouble, Li Shuwen said. Want to run away? Let me tell you, there is no possibility. Evening meteor. With the roar of the Nirvana Dragon King in front of him, the whole sky seemed to have changed its color. The originally blue sky has completely turned red at this moment, and the redness is a bit weird, as if it is a precursor to the end of the world. Everything around it has been dyed red, but it is dyed red by the endless flames of. The earth was smashed to pieces by the falling meteors, and at this moment, the ancient burial god realm began to tremble continuously. The supreme elders outside seemed to feel the turmoil coming out of the ancient burial god realm at this time. At this moment, this secret realm seemed to be showing signs of being broken. The ancestors of various sects standing in the air felt the huge turmoil brought by this artistic conception at this moment, and said with shocked expressions on their faces. What's going on? Is there some terrible crisis happening here? Or is there something extraordinary that has come out that caused the entire secret realm to be so shaken? I don't know. Could it be that something happened among those boys? That's not possible. After all, no matter how talented these guys are in the ancient burial god realm, they can't possibly make such a big noise here. You have to know that there are geniuses from all small worlds here. There are even some ancient powers hidden inside. After hearing these words, everyone nodded. They were more inclined to the former, that is, something extraordinary appeared in this secret realm, causing a melee between heaven and earth, so there was such a huge turmoil. But when a great opportunity appears, it must be accompanied by an extreme crisis. Anyone who wants to seize this opportunity is extremely terrifying. Lin Yan and the others looked at each other, didn't say anything, and just waited quietly. At this time, the people in the buried ancient god realm had serious expressions on their faces when they saw the scene not far away. What is going on? How could this natural disaster be so terrifying? Who caused such a natural disaster? At this time, a handsome young man wearing Taoist robes, holding a wooden sword in his hand, and his eyebrows full of righteousness stared at the scene not far away with a solemn expression. With such violent and terrifying power, this should be the birth of the rumored heaven and earth spirit fire, but his birth should not have such a terrifying scene. His eyes were full of doubts, as if he wanted to figure out the reason, but he couldn't think of a reason after much thought. At this time, Ao Zhan and others were running away desperately. Su Han was running behind and looked at the Dragon King of Annihilation who was constantly controlling the falling meteor. Everyone's expressions were extremely ugly. Brother Ao Zhan, is there any way to cure this guy? Look at how awesome you were before, and now you are being chased and beaten. Li Shuwen was running crazily at this time, fearing that if she slowed down, she would be hit by the meteors all over the sky. At the moment he was speaking, a hot meteor suddenly hit him in front of him. The flames surrounding him made his skin feel a burning sting. Fortunately, I slowed down, otherwise I would really have been flattened. Even if it wasn't flattened, the impact would have made me miserable. Moreover, the flames on this meteor were so terrifying and domineering. This guy is really unreasonable. Li Shuwen said happily for the rest of his life, but in an instant, he felt a sense of crisis again. At this moment, dozens of meteors suddenly appeared behind him, all of them hitting him so densely that it seemed impossible to escape. Li Shuwen's scalp went numb when she saw this scene. At this time, Su Han directly pulled out the long sword in his hand and swung it. The sword energy in the sky directly cut the meteor into pieces. Don't be distracted, don't be careless. How did I teach you? You are still so sick on the battlefield. If I hadn't saved you just now, you would have died long ago. This is not a child's play, Su Han said sharply. Elder Sus' lesson is, but what should we do with this guy? He is fighting with us now. We can't escape. Let's see if we can drag him to death, Li Shuwen said. After hearing what Li Shuwen said, both of them looked affirmative and spoke. This guy has already made us a mortal enemy, but his body won't last long. This land has been completely shattered, and the falling meteor has caused the entire ancient burial god realm to collapse. And the Dragon King of Annihilation was still biting the two of them, still unwilling to let them leave. Everything he did and reached this point was because of this group of people in front of him. So how could he let them leave? Meteors in the sky became more and more frequent. The flames in the sky became more and more dazzling, as if two great suns had completely appeared in the sky, shining so brightly that people could no longer open their eyes. Even in the ancient burial god realm, people from other places looked at the dazzling light appearing in the sky and felt the rising temperature around them. At this time, they also looked into the distance with solemn faces. Amitabha, it seems that something big has happened. This poor monk should rush over and take a closer look. Hey, are you done with this guy? You have been chasing us for so long and you still refuse to let us go. You are such a bastard. Li Shuwen's face was already flushed at this time, and it took her so long to hold back such a sentence. But he really had no choice, because the attacks of the Nirvana Dragon King in front of him became more and more violent. There was no complete land around them. At this moment, they had no way to retreat. They were surrounded by a sea of AA fire. It's all this hot flame. And they can't fly into the sky to escape. Because there are meteors in the sky, if you are not careful, you will be hit by the meteors. At that time, even if you don't fall on the spot, you will be seriously injured. You kid is still trying to convince him. Don't you see what he is like? His body is about to fall apart. Didn't you see that there are more and more cracks on his body? His whole body will be affected by that violent force. If it is broken, if the incense is delayed for another moment, this guy's body will completely collapse. Ao Zhan was helpless and angry at the same time. But the next second, the sudden meteor hit him beside him, which also made him a little frightened. Come on. This stick of incense is enough for him to kill us, Li Shuwen said. Then what should we do? This guy is completely crazy now, and I just want to die with us. Ao Zhan spread his hands and said helplessly. Then what else can we do? We can only face the enemy head-on, Su-Han said with a hint of helplessness. I admit that you have some abilities and are indeed very strong, but this guy's strength far exceeds the realm of the Earth Supreme. He has even touched the threshold of the Heavenly Supreme. Ao Zan's face turned serious and he said, fortunately, the strength of the Nirvana Dragon King in front of him did not reach the Heavenly Supreme Realm. Otherwise even he could only be beaten by the Nirvana Dragon King. I can't, but you can, right? Su-Han said. A smile appeared on Su-Han's face, which made Ao Zan in front of him look confused. Of course he knew what Su-Han meant. Now he had only one way to have a fierce battle with the Dragon King of Annihilation, and that was for Su-Han to return the Dragon Ball, but... Are you telling the truth? You have to think clearly. If you really give me the Dragon Ball, I will turn my back on you and deny you, but no one can stop me. Ao Zan also had a doubtful look on his face at this time, but Su-Han spoke. Would your noble dragon bloodline allow you to do such a thing? If you really do such a thing, then I will admit it. It only means that you are just like the Nirvana Dragon King said. Ida sa shame among the Dragon Clan. Furthermore, I also suspect that your body may have been taken away by others, and the previous reincarnation of the true Lord may be in your mind. Su-Han touched his chin at this time, with a thoughtful look on his face. This look made the face in front of him darken. In the end, Su-Han didn't hesitate at all, and he took out the Dragon Ball directly. The crystal clear, sparkling Dragon Ball, the moment it appeared, dimmed all the colors in the world. Ao Zan felt the throbbing of the blood in his body at this time, felt the desire of his body, and there was also an uncontrollable desire in his eyes at this moment. Su-Han seemed to have already seen his desire, but Ao Zan in front of him seemed to be trying his best to restrain himself, and then said with a suspicious look on his face. You guys are really bold. You guys are really not afraid that I will turn against you. After all, if I kill you after getting this Dragon Ball, no one will remember it. I believe in your character. I bet on your noble dragon bloodline. I don't believe that this kind of thing will happen. Su smiled. Finally, he threw the Dragon Ball directly into Ao Zan's hand, and Ao Zan caught the Dragon Ball very naturally. At this time, he had a dull look on his face. Looking at the Dragon Ball in front of him, it seemed that the desire in his body had been completely stopped, and the look on his face became silent. You guys really make me a little confused about what to say. I just suddenly felt that you seem to be a good person. Ao Zan looked at the thing in his hand, hesitated slightly, and said slowly. But he didn't say much, he just looked at the Annihilation Dragon King in the sky and his eyes changed slightly. He swallowed the Dragon Ball directly. After swallowing the Dragon Ball, an unrivaled dragon power began to spread out. Ao Zan's strength has returned to its peak. All the shackles on his body seemed to be broken at this moment, and his eyes were filled with white light. From within his body, a dragon's roar from ancient times completely resounded through the sky. Ha 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 ha, it's so refreshing. The feeling of the Dragon Ball returning to its original form is so comfortable. Ao Zan laughed. So the next second, the spiritual power that belonged to him began to spread out continuously, and at this moment, the Dragon King of Annihilation in the sky seemed to feel something was wrong. He felt an unprecedented sense of crisis, which made his whole body tremble. Even after swallowing the Nirvana Dragon Flame, he still couldn't stop trembling. Damn, this is impossible. The Nirvana Dragon King spoke frantically at this time. As the Nirvana Dragon King became more angry, more and more meteors began to slowly fall in the sky, seeming to level the entire ancient burial god realm. Ao Zan looked at the flaming meteors flying all over the sky, with a very confident look on his face at this moment. He turned his head and left a confident smile on Su-Han and everyone else. Damn it, I really let this guy pretend. This guy is now so strong that it's terrifying. Just standing next to him, I already feel a strong pressure, and it seems that even my legs are shaking. It's like he collapsed on the ground. Li Shuwen said with some shock as she felt the pressure from Ao Zan in front of her. Then he looked at the flaming meteors flying all over the sky, and at this moment his expression suddenly changed and he spoke. Ao Zan, you have to stand it. If you can't stand it, then we will be doomed. If you can't kill this old boy, then we will be burned to ashes. I thought you stupid big guy had no brains. Didn't you see my confident smile just now? After Ao Zan heard Li Shuwen's words, all his good mood was immediately ruined. His face darkened and he looked at the meteors flying all over the sky. At this moment, I saw Ao Zan spreading his legs as wide as his shoulders, and then accumulating strength in his abdomen. He only saw him roaring, and a burst of dragon power slowly spread out. The roar from ancient times directly shattered the flaming meteors in the sky. Even the Dragon King of Annihilation floating in the sky was shaken by the powerful roar and fell down. You're just a long worm with mixed blood. Do you really think you can compare with me? Ao Zhan sneered, and the extraordinary power in his bloodline blossomed. The Dragon King of Annihilation in front of him seemed to feel that his body was on the verge of being broken. He wanted to stand up, but found that his body no longer had any strength. Ao Zhan's roar just now completely shattered all his hopes and all the strength in his heart. The last hope in his heart that he would die with Su Han and the others was shattered. You're still alive. You have some abilities, but that's all. Ao Zhan stood in front of him and started to say with high spirits. The Annihilation Dragon King's eyes were full of numbness at this moment, and there was no longer the madness before, and he spoke. It really makes people feel unwilling. I have stayed here for so long just to refine this flame. As long as I am given another 100 years, then this Nirvana Dragon Flame can be completely integrated with me. I don't fight or grab here. I don't do anything out of the ordinary here. I just want to protect this 3-acre land. I just want to refine this ball of Nirvana Dragon Flame. Why did it attract the current situation? What about the disaster? You greedy human beings, I have never offended you. You came here and took away what I protected. I lost to you today because I am not as skilled as others, but I am dead. These words clearly demonstrated the unwillingness of the Nirvana Dragon King in front of him, and even Ao Zhan couldn't bear it. But he changed his mind and immediately said, if I'm to blame, I blame you for being too arrogant. When will it be your turn to discuss my identity? The Nirvana Dragon King in front of him took a deep look at Ao Zhan and seemed to understand that this guy was indeed very powerful. He just couldn't understand why such a powerful person would be willing to live next to a human being. He is obviously a noble dragon and has such pure dragon blood. Why are you willing to follow such a brat who seems to be in the early stage of Earth Supreme? Don't look at me like that, this guy is more evil than you think. Ao Zhan spread his hands and said helplessly. At this moment, a more powerful dragon power suddenly appeared, and a divine dragon suddenly wrapped around Su Han. He looked at the dying Dragon King in front of him, his eyes full of curiosity, but the next second, he came to the side of the Nirvana Dragon King. After seeing this divine dragon appear, the Dragon King of Annihilation in front of him seemed to understand something, with a helpless smile on his face. He seemed to understand why Ao Zhan was following Su Han, and he could also feel the terrifying pressure emanating from the dragon. It's true that you guy. Be careful in the next life, don't be so talkative. It seems that this little guy seems to have taken a liking to you, and it is an honor for you to be a part of him. Ao Zhan said lightly, and turned his head away after finishing speaking, because what happened next was already clear in his heart. The next second, I saw the body of the Nirvana Dragon King completely shattered. His body could no longer withstand the terrifying power of the Nirvana Dragon Flame. At this time, the Nirvana Dragon Flame appeared again between heaven and earth. Su Han immediately rushed forward and directly grabbed the violent Nirvana Dragon Flame. And that divine dragon also rushed forward and completely devoured the Dragon King of Annihilation, whose body gradually dissipated between heaven and earth. The originally violent volcano began to stop at this time. Everything finally became calm, and the blazing temperature in the sky began to slowly drop. The originally scorching sky suddenly began to rain heavily, which seemed to bring an end to this incident. I finally got this thing, but this guy is really troublesome. After thinking about it, this guy is so talkative that he actually made Ao Zhan completely angry. Li Wuxiang said with some emotion, glanced at Ao Zhan and then quickly turned his head away. But they are also enemies, and what they want is what the Dragon King of Annihilation has been protecting. The so-called genius treasures are inhabited by capable people. As long as they have ideas, the Nirvana Dragon King will definitely strangle them. Yes, I finally got it, but you, the little guy, can be considered full. When you are full, go back and rest obediently. Why? Su Han said slowly. After speaking, the divine dragon that had just appeared retreated to Su Han's arm, leaving only a small tattoo. Ao Zhan, who was still intoxicated with his own power a second ago, now his eyes are full of calm. Li Wuxiang seemed to realize something at this time, and his eyes were full of warning. Now that after dealing with the Dragon King of Annihilation, it's time to deal with another thing, which is Ao Zhan in front of him. This guy has now obtained the Dragon Ball. It can be said that his strength has been completely liberated. His strength has returned to its peak, so will he be controlled by Su Han and will he take revenge? This is a big question. Hey, what are you doing? Standing here motionless, what are you doing? Are you getting wet in the rain? You look like idiots. Li Shuwen's silly voice suddenly sounded, and the surprisingly quiet atmosphere just now was instantly broken. Everyone's eyes were focused on Li Shuwen. After saying this, Ao Zhan, who was facing him, also realized that his tense face instantly collapsed, with a few black lines showing on his forehead, and his eyes were filled with helpless anger. He immediately came to Li Shuwen, his eyes glowing red. These words instantly calmed down the originally tense scene. At this time, everyone looked at Li Shuwen next to them. Li Shuwen also scratched his head at this time, his eyes full of wisdom. He didn't know why these people were standing in the heavy rain. He only knew that these people might have lost their minds and stood looking at each other in the rain. You guy, you really deserve a beating. You really deserve a beating. Ao Zhan had a helpless smile on his face at this time and said. You guy, what are you talking about? Have you beaten me enough? Li Shuwen's face was full of resentment. Don't say, you kid, you deserve to be beaten. This makes it seem like I'm bullying you. But don't talk so much to me here, kid. After hearing these words, the people around him all felt as if they were facing a formidable enemy, and Ao Zhan turned his attention to Su Han in front of him and spoke. Aren't you afraid that I will take care of you all now? Because now I have taken back the Dragon Balls, and most of my strength has been restored. Do you think you are still my opponent now? Ao Zhan had a faint smile on his face at this time. These words made everyone present tense up and get ready for battle. It can be said that we have treated you as one of our own along the way. Are you trying to completely break up with us by saying this? Li Wuxiang said angrily, a spear exuding cold air condensed in his hand. Okay. Li Wuxiang, please step back. Su Han looked at the faces of these people who were facing each other with helpless expressions, and slowly walked forward. He said to Ao Zhan next to him. That's enough, stop teasing these brats. These brats don't tease you in the first place. If you say this, I'm afraid they will be scared to death. Don't say that. If you want to scare me to death, there is only one other person, that brat. He has no intention of being scared. Look at him now and he still wants to get close to me. I really wanted to punch him away. Ao Zhan had a look of dissatisfaction on his face, looked at Li Shuwen next to him, and said. After Li Shuwen heard these words, a silly smile appeared on his face and he said. What I said, I thought you were about to start a fight, but what I said was correct. After seeing the relaxed words of Su Han and Ao Zhan in front of him, Li Wuxiang breathed a sigh of relief and said. Really, you guys have to have a limit when it comes to joking. The way you acted just now almost scared me to death. I thought you were going to kill us all. If this doesn't scare you, how can it make you feel afraid? You guys really have no sense of awe on this journey. I am a dragon with noble blood. You guys should understand your seniority and inferiority, Ao Zhan said very arrogantly. Come on, you are a dragon with noble blood. If you were truly noble, you wouldn't have been locked here for so many years. Li Shuwen had a look of disdain on her face, and these words directly touched Ao Zhan's heart. After Ao Zhan heard these words, a smile appeared on his face, and he slowly walked to Li Shuwen and said. It seems that I didn't let you get beaten, so you have become so out of touch now. If this is the case, then I will discipline you well. As he said that, he directly sealed Li Shuwen's body with his spiritual power. Li Shuwen only felt an extremely powerful pressure sweeping over him instantly. When he reacted, his whole body seemed to be ruthlessly restrained by something, and he couldn't even move. But at this time, everyone could only watch Ao Zhan in front of them, beating Li Shuwen mercilessly, with a smile on their face that couldn't help but laugh. However, although the matter just now was resolved, you have caused a lot of trouble now. After all, everyone in the entire ancient burial god realm is aware of the commotion just now. After a long time, everything fell silent. Ao Zhan ignored Li Shuwen, whose face was swollen like a pig's head, and said slowly. It's okay, aren't we here with you? You are such a powerful guy, you just hit me so hard, I think those guys wouldn't dare to do anything if you were here. Li Shuwen covered her completely swollen face and spoke vaguely. I still have to go back and digest the power in my Dragon Ball. After all, my Dragon Ball has not returned to my body for thousands of years. I still have to adapt well and digest the power that this Dragon Ball brings to me. So I will temporarily sleep for a while, and you can only rely on yourselves for the rest. Ao Zhan said and turned into a dragon soul and poured directly into Su Han's body. Su Han had a look of helplessness on his face at this time, while Ao Zhan, who had already run away with Li Shuwen and others next to him, had a dull look on his face, and then he spoke. This guy is really unreasonable. He just abandoned us like this. We just gave him the Dragon Ball to help him regain his strength. He actually did this to us. Come on. You still want to rely on others. Now our biggest enemies have been eliminated by us. Some of them are just jackals, tigers and leopards hiding in the dark. If you have to rely on this senior to clean up this, then you guys just don't come in. Li Wuxiang said with a look of disdain on his face. After all, Ao Zhan has eliminated their biggest threat, which is the Dragon King of Annihilation. The Annihilation Dragon King is really too powerful, and his abilities are also very weird. Without Ao Zhan, they would not be opponents at all. So I can only rely on Ao Zhan, and now the biggest threats have been eliminated. If he has pressed out the remaining enemies and they can't deal with them, Then what are they doing here? Everyone didn't think too much. They tidied up the things around them and the traces of the battle with the Nirvana Dragon King just now, and prepared to go out. At this moment, a dart suddenly flashed past. The dart emitted a ray of light and passed directly in front of everyone. It was very vicious and went straight to the vital points, as if it wanted to take their lives. At this time, Su Han reacted in time and turned his spiritual power into substance with his hands, knocking away all the darts in front of him. But those darts kept fighting with them as if they were alive. Su Han looked at the darts all over the sky with a look of displeasure on his face. Then, he stamped his feet, and all the darts were scattered on the ground. Since you have the guts to come here and take action, how about you come out and let us see your true face? Su Han looked around, with a cold smile on his face, and an extremely powerful pressure slowly dissipated towards the surroundings. Sure enough, it's a good trick. No wonder we made such a big noise just now. It seems that you were the ones who took away the rare treasure that was just born. At this time, two people slowly walked up to them. There was a proud smile on their faces, and their eyes were full of confidence, as if they had everything under control. Who are you? Li Wuxiang asked with a little doubt. Logically speaking, he seemed to have never met these people, and he had never offended them. It seemed that these two guys were just looking for trouble, and they even found trouble with them. Li Shu. Li Ran. The two people spoke very confidently. He looked at the people in front of him and looked at their outfits, and concluded that they must be from some relatively low-level small world. Since they are people from the small world, it proves that they can do whatever they want, and their strength seems to be mediocre. So he is very good at killing people and seizing treasures. After all, if he can pick a soft persimmon to pinch, he must pinch it hard. It seems that we have been looked down upon by these two guys. They seem to look down on us, Shen Mo said with a calm face. It seems that these two guys are very confident in their own strength. He seems to have determined that we are no match for him. What will happen next, whether to kill them or maim them? The look on Wang Tianwan's face was also very cold. This was the first time that he saw someone directly hitting their heads with plans. What had they not experienced along the way? These guys were so contemptuous of others. Ha 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 ha, brother, these natives from the lower world are so stupid. They seem to be intimidated by our momentum. Li Ran in front of him said to Li Shu with a very excited face. Of course, your brother and I have been around the world for so many years, and we still have such names. They must have heard of our names, and they should be afraid now. Li Shu said proudly. In this case, then give them a chance. As long as they can hand over the things properly, then let him live. Li Shu was even more proud at this time, and even the corners of his mouth were raised a little higher. He immediately took a step and was about to speak to the people opposite. Before he could say anything, Li Shuwen rushed over and kicked him in the face, sending Li Shu flying several hundred meters backward. At this time, Li Shuwen vomited on the ground, and then said disdainfully. Where did you come from? Why are you pretending to be in front of me? I haven't even started to pretend, but you have started to pretend. You just deserve to be beaten. He flew directly to the place where Li Shu had reached, and then a pair of big feet stamped on his face crazily. This tragic scene made Li Ran next to him couldn't help but tremble a few times. Yes, what did he want to say just now? He doesn't seem to have finished what he said. Come on, take his place and finish what he didn't finish. After ravaging Li Shu crazily, Li Shuwen turned around and looked at Li Ran in front of him with a cold face. Well, brother, you misunderstood. The two of us just observed the domineering aura coming from outside, so we came here to pay homage to Shantou. We came here to say hello to you. Li Ran in front of him knelt on the spot before he had time to think. His movements were so smooth that everyone around him was dumbfounded. Li Wuxiang looked at Li Ran, who was giving in. His forehead was full of black lines, and said, I have to say, this guy has no moral integrity at all. Ha 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 ha, of course I have been in the world for so many years, and I still have the aura of domination. I didn't expect that I could intimidate you from such a distance. After Li Shuwen heard this sentence, he immediately became elated, and then started laughing crazily. He stepped on Li Shu's body in front of him with one foot. The look on his face became more and more proud. Suddenly, the force on his feet became stronger, causing Ji Shu under his feet to howl in pain. What's your name? You've got so many things going on. Why don't I just kick you in the foot? You screamed so miserably, you thought I had abused you. Li Shuwen said contemptuously. Everyone was just joining in the fun. After all, Li Shuwen had nothing but outstanding strength, so they didn't pay too much attention. At this moment, a Taoist priest came on a cloud, and he was seen holding a fly whisk in his hand and a mahogany sword on his back. His eyes were full of sharpness, but also had a lot of calmness. Several donors, Xiaodao, this is polite. The Taoist priest said in a very kind tone. Come on, it's better now. It seems that I have provoked all the people who shouldn't have been provoked. This guy turned out to be just a gangster. It's a shame that I still value you so much. I didn't expect these low-class guys. At this time, Li Shuwen stepped hard on Li Shu, who was under her feet, and said with contempt on her face. At this time, Li Shu howled again, and then passed out completely. At this time, Li Shuwen looked at the refugee Taoist priest riding on the clouds in the sky, and the look on his face became very arrogant, saying he was pregnant. Hey, that stinking Taoist priest, what are you doing here? Are you running around every day with nothing to do? I have long heard that you stinky Taoist priests are all crazy and have a bad temper. Now it seems that it is indeed the case. You are full and have nothing to do. Why do you come here to us? Li Shuwen's words directly caused the Taoist priest in front of him to twitch his mouth slightly, wrinkle his forehead, and reveal a very helpless look on his face. Logically speaking, he appeared so kind and his words were full of kindness, so why did he attract such abuse from this guy? Don't condemn Pindao yet. Pindao just came to take a look. After all, there was too much noise just now. There must be a strange treasure born here. Aren't the people who come here just to find 2 more good things for self-defense? So it's not surprising that several donors came here. The Taoist priest in front of him did not break his guard. Instead, his face became kinder and his tone became softer. Stinky Taoist priest, just talk nonsense to me here. You guys have bad intentions and are all old foxes. You are all here. Why are you pretending to me here? Li Shuwen didn't care about it at all, and just started messing around and severely criticized the person in front of him. At this time, on the other side of them, the Buddha's light shone all of a sudden, and the spiritual power with the power of purification suddenly spread out throughout the world, making Su Han's people feel very uncomfortable, and everyone, he couldn't help but frown. Infinite Heavenly Lord, donor, everyone who comes as a guest, your attitude is wrong. The Taoist priest in front of him had a kind smile on his face and said. So everyone is just a guest? That stinking Taoist priest over there, tell me, what do you want to do here? Do you want to attack us? Li Shuwen said in a domineering tone. Please don't be angry, the donor is not alone. As soon as he said these words, a burst of Buddha's light suddenly woke up. This burst of Buddha's light made the world around him seem to have evolved. At this moment, all the monsters around seemed to have their souls cleansed. Their eyes were full of purity and devotion to the Buddha. They saw them kneeling on the ground in front of them, as if they were bathing in the Buddha's light and feeling the feeling in front of them. The purification this person brings to them. Sure enough, this little monk has also come over. This little monk is really annoying. He makes such a big fuss every time he appears. Can't he be more simple like Taoist master? The Xiaodao in front of him twitched his lips and murmured in a low voice. Ha 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 ha, interesting. Looks like there's another one. It looks like he's having some fun this time. Li Shuwen looked at the people gradually gathering, with an excited look on her face. At this time, more and more people were swarming around, and they saw a sudden gathering of blood in the sky. The endless murderous and demonic energy made everyone tremble with fear. Even the monsters near the volcano had all hid in fear. Some monsters shrouded in blood had blood-red eyes at this moment. All lost their minds. Ha 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 ha, smelly monk, smelly Taoist priest, it looks like you came here pretty quickly. At this moment, many people suddenly gathered in the originally lonely volcano. These countless experts came, making Ji Wuxiang in front of him frown slightly. It seems that we are in trouble this time. They seem to be the top geniuses in the world. They come here to cause trouble for us. Li Wuxiang frowned slightly and said warily. At this moment, a flame suddenly appeared in front of everyone, and the flame slowly transformed into a human form. A man with fiery red hair, cold eyes, and a terrifying Japanese aura stood in front of them. Yan Ling, I didn't expect you to come too. The man who was full of blood said with an evil smile on his face. Yes, I had to come this time because I have a reason to come. After all, the things born here are extremely important to me. Yan Ling said with a smile, seemingly determined to get the treasure here. Ha 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 ha. You usually don't fight or grab, and you usually work alone. Why do you suddenly appear here now? Could it be that the things here are of great use to you? But I will not give up such good things to you. Seeing this, the man who was full of blood did not make any concessions. Instead, he spoke even more domineeringly. Quan Ming, you seem to be a little too arrogant. Why do you think you are trying to rob me? Yan Ling in front of him was obviously unhappy, and he said with a cold face. Seeing their tense atmosphere, the expressions on the faces of Su Han and others who were at the center of them also became very bad. It's over, it's over, it's over. It seems that this time it's a tough battle. These guys are all here with bad intentions. It seems that the miscellaneous dragon just caused too much noise and brought these guys over. Silence said. Then what should we do next? These guys seem to have come here with bad intentions, so should we fight or flee? Li Shuwen twisted his arm at this time, with a ferocious smile on his face. The more people there were, the more excited he became, and these guys didn't seem to be much higher in strength than him. It could be said that they were on the same starting line, so he has plenty to play with. Moreover, these guys are all geniuses from various small worlds. It can be said that they are very powerful. Being able to compete with them will be very enjoyable for him. Guys, let's not talk so much. We are all here for the treasure. Let's stop fighting for a while and take a look at what is here. It can actually attract us all here. At this time, a dazzling light suddenly appeared in front of everyone, and they saw a man with yellow hair, holding a white sword in his hand, and wearing white armor. The whole person is like a god descending to earth, carrying a holy and powerful aura, just like a human god. Guangming Saint Clan, Emperor Yin. At this time, everyone had a dangerous look on their faces, as if they had seen a terrifying enemy. The surprisingly unanimous changes of these four people made Su Han and others below frown slightly. It's really interesting. It seems that a great guy has emerged. This guy can make these four people show such expressions. It seems that he should be the most troublesome person. Su Han smiled and said, "Really? That guy doesn't look like much, he just looks like that. This guy is so good at pretending, I will definitely beat him to pieces when the time comes." Li Shuwen spoke very confidently at this time. As he spoke, he waved his fist, looking extremely confident. At this time, their eyes all turned to Su Han, and then Di Yin, who had just appeared on the scene, spoke. "Fellow Taoist, it seems that you got here first. I don't know what kind of treasures there are here. Why don't you take them out to everyone and let us see what they are all about?" His words undoubtedly pushed the atmosphere here to a climax. At this time, Su Han's face was cold and his eyes were cold, and Li Wuxiang was even more so. The cold aura on his body was undoubtedly revealed. "Hey, if those little guys below obediently give you what you got, I will be able to let you leave safely this time. If you don't listen, haha, then don't blame me for using some tricks." Quan Ming sneered, and a murderous aura full of blood was immediately revealed. "Amitabha. The donor may wish to take it out and take a look to see if the protection in your hand is destined to my Buddha." The young monk in front of him immediately said very sincerely. Although his original intention was very sincere, this sentence could be regarded as a threat. It seems like these guys regard us as lambs to be slaughtered. These guys really don't take us seriously. The blue veins on Li Wuxiang's forehead popped out, his eyes were filled with frost, and the power of ice on his body slowly spread out. The chill brought by this extreme power of ice made those in the sky couldn't help but shiver. Shock. It's really interesting. It seems that this time I met an incredible guy. He can actually have such terrifying power of ice. On the cold road, since it has reached this level, this is the first time I have seen such a person. A man of strength. The little Taoist priest next to him suddenly spoke. At this time, Li Shuwen stood up, his eyes filled with violence, and he looked at the little Taoist priest in front of him and said, "Hey, smelly Taoist priest, you are also with them, right? Since you are with them, then come here." "Hey, stop it, Pindao is not with them. Pindao is just an independent person from Shenyang Yihe. He just wants to watch a good show here and understand what the thing that just appeared is. The vagina is not meant to be taken by force." The little Taoist priest immediately stretched out his hand and spoke. "Then you, a stinking Taoist priest, are still aware of the situation, but those few around you seem to be here to rob you." Li Shuwen stood up at this time. The aura exuding from his body was like an awakened ancient beast, and the extremely powerful aura of the ancient world shocked those in front of him. With the power of Hui Niu, this guy is not simple anymore. No wonder he has the courage to stand up. It seems that it was not an accident that these guys got that thing. Quan Ming's face was no longer as relaxed as when he first came here, and he said in a deep voice. "Hey, Di Yin, do you want to take action? If you don't, then I'll have to test the waters first." Quan Ming suddenly turned his head and looked at Di Yin, who was standing in the sky like a god with an indifferent expression, and said. Di Yin didn't say a word at this time. His eyes were neither happy nor sad. It seemed that he had no emotions. After seeing the first expression, the look on Quan Ming's face immediately became very ferocious. Said. "It seems like you don't plan to participate anymore, but that's okay, you are cowards, let me test their strength personally." I saw Quan Ming take action immediately, and two claws suddenly attacked the group of them. At this time, a golden sword light flashed directly, and the two claws were cut into pieces. That terrifying golden sword energy made everyone's faces freeze. At this moment, Shen Mo stood up. There was no emotion in his eyes, and he just said silently, "Leave this guy to me." "Hey, why should this guy be handed over to you first? I'm attracted to this guy, and he needs to be whipped by me." Li Shuwen was very unconvinced and said, "I don't have time for your nonsense." After saying that, the silence in front of him immediately rushed out. He pulled out the golden sword, and his figure was like a yellow lightning and instantly came to the back of the weight. That lightning-like sword directly wanted to take away the life of Quan Ming in front of him. Quan Ming immediately turned around, raised the magic claw in his hand, blocked the arrow, and said with a sneer on his face, "You're not a bad boy. You were able to block my attack and counterattack just now. I underestimated you. It seems that you are very valuable. I want to kill you with my own hands and bring back my blood. Pool, made into a puppet. You talk a lot." Shen Mo sneered. Immediately afterwards, his figure disappeared from the spot, and a bolt of yellow lightning suddenly struck Quan Ming in front of him. He suddenly felt a flash of swordlight. He immediately dodged, but an inch of hair around his ears was still chopped off. "It looks like it's still too slow. However, I didn't try my best. I can only say that you are lucky. If I tried my best, you would not have lost your hair with that sword just now, but your head." Shen Mo looked at the red hair that was gradually falling, with a trace of pity on his face. It was this pity look on his face that completely angered Quan Ming in front of him. Quan Ming's face was distorted at this moment, and he roared angrily. Very good, very good. You have completely angered me. Next, I will send you to hell. I will let you taste my torture. Fellow Taoist, why don't we make an exchange? I need the thing in your hand very much. It is very important to me, so I can satisfy you with whatever treasure you want, as long as you can get the heaven and earth spirit in your hand. Give me the fire. Yan Ling did not fight like Quan Ming, but immediately stood up and seemed to want to negotiate terms with them. Really? It seems like you are not a simple guy. You can actually know that what we got is a heaven and earth spiritual fire. Su Han said with a calm face. Of course, this is one of the most basic methods of our Yan clan. We, the Yan clan, are born with an innate affinity for the myriad fires of heaven and earth. Therefore, the aura emitted by the heaven and earth spiritual fire in your hand cannot be concealed. But Yan Ling said slowly, I really can't help it. I didn't expect to meet so many weird guys when I came out this time. It really made me a little bit difficult to deal with. Su Han had a look of helplessness on his face, but he still didn't take out the spirit annihilation. How about it? Fellow Taoist, as long as you can give me the spiritual fire of heaven and earth in your hand, then I can satisfy you whatever you want. I can let you have wealth and martial arts skills that ordinary people cannot have. Yan Ling said with excitement, as if he had already expected that Su Han would agree to such a generous condition. You guys are really serious. Isn't it just to become stronger as a cultivator? You actually came up with something to tempt me. But if you want me to hand over this heaven and earth spiritual fire, of course you can. When Yan Ling heard this, a smile suddenly appeared on his face, and he looked at Quan Ming, who was still fighting, as if he was showing off, and then he spoke again. As long as fellow Taoists give me this spiritual fire, I will definitely satisfy you from the Yan clan on whatever terms you want. From now on, you will be a distinguished guest of my Yan clan. Easy. Just get another one. Su Han said slowly, with a smile on his face, as if he was mocking Yan Ling in front of him. After hearing these words, veins appeared on the kind face of Yan Lingyang in front of him. You guys are really annoying. I have already made so many concessions to you. I've already said it, and I asked you to make whatever conditions you want, but you're actually teasing me like this. Do you want to die? Yan Ling clenched his fists, and the look on his face became extremely revealing, which was completely the opposite of the kind look he had before. If that's the case, don't blame me for being rude. If you don't eat the toast, you'll be fined, then I'll burn you to pieces. Yan Ling couldn't hold it any longer, and a hot and terrifying aura erupted from his body. Li Wuxiang, go and put out the fire on him. It's best to put a chill in his heart and let this guy calm down. Seeing this, Su Han didn't panic at all, he just said calmly. After hearing these words, Li Wu, Chi-Chi-san, immediately stood up, with a very cold look on his face. He stood in front of Yan Ling, forming a defensive attitude. This move made the whole scene very exciting. The little Taoist priest next to him, holding a whisk in his hand and carrying a wooden sword behind his back, also showed a very excited look on his face at this moment. Oh my god, I haven't seen such a wonderful scene for a long time. I didn't expect this scene to be much more exciting than squatting in the Yuandao temple, eating and drinking, waiting to die. The little Taoist priest directly found a comfortable place to lie down and watched quietly. At this time, Wang Tianwan looked at the little Taoist priest in front of him with an extremely serious expression on his face. I'm afraid this guy is not simple. I'm afraid this guy is not as weak as we thought. Logically speaking, as long as there is one person in this situation, he will definitely come in to get a share of the pie, but this guy refuses to fight or grab. Now it seems that this guy has a bigger idea. Wang Tianhuan spoke inappropriately at this time. After hearing this, Su Han also looked at the little Taoist priest who was lying down next to him. The little Taoist priest seemed to understand Wang Tianhuan's words, and said with a helpless smile on his face. This donor, you are worrying too much. What we cultivators pay attention to is fate, but this fate is wonderful. What is yours is yours. This is destiny. That is not yours, so why bother to fight for it? This treasure in your hand has nothing to do with me, so I don't need to snatch it from you. I hope that's the best. Who knows what your plans are? Maybe you're waiting for both of them to lose, so that you can benefit. Wang Tianhuan said with a cold snort at this time. The vigilance on his face did not relax because of what the little Taoist said. Donor, your vision is too narrow. Who do you think Pindao is? Pindao is an upright Taoist. The Taoist priest in front of him said seriously. At this time, the battle had entered a fierce stage. Li Wuxiang in front of him and Yan Ling next to him seemed to have met their opponents. It was difficult to distinguish between them. One was water and the other was fire, and the two refused to give in. Ha 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 ha. What a surprise. I didn't expect you to have mastered such a terrifying meaning of ice. I haven't encountered a guy like you in a long time. I must give my body a good shake today. Yan Ling sneered, and the excitement in his eyes could no longer be concealed. At this time, Shen Shen was fighting on par with Quan Ming in front of him. Shen Shen's sword was as fast as lightning, and Quan Ming's terrifying bloody aura made everyone around him lose their minds, and even in severe cases, it will turn directly into blood. But the silent sword came and went without a trace, and the golden sword light made Quan Ming in front of him feel a great pressure. It's really surprising that you are so powerful. You are so proficient in this swordsmanship. This sword comes and goes without a trace. It is even so powerful that it is like a golden lightning. Not even my abilities can completely restrain him. Quan Ming looked at the injuries on his body at this time, and with a wave of his hand, the infinite blood energy instantly made up for the injuries on his body. Silence felt like he was facing a formidable enemy at this time. Looking at the enemy in front of him, he also realized that the blood demon energy in this guy was the foundation of self-defense for him. If the blood demon energy in this guy cannot be exhausted, or if he cannot kill with one blow, he will definitely delay his death. It's a really difficult opponent, but that's it. Only difficult opponents are worth defeating. Only in this way can I reach a higher realm. Shen Shen licked his lips, and there was a look of excitement on his face. Now it has completely lost the look of Shen Shen before. It is more like a butcher who has completely started killing. Li Shuwen, who was standing next to him, looked at Di Yin in the sky with a look of disdain on his face. As you all have picked your opponents, let me leave the guy above who looks the most powerful. This guy pretends to be very good as soon as he comes in. It seems that he should be the most powerful among these people. Then I will fight him. Li Shuwen angrily pointed at Di Yin, who was currently floating in the sky wearing silver-white armor and carrying a giant sword behind him, and said with great pride. Amitabha, donor, you are destined to be my Buddha. How about taking refuge in Buddhism? At this time, a monk suddenly appeared, his eyes full of peaceful light, but that peaceful light was full of confusion. What kind of bullshit is your fate? What are you doing here? Get out of here. I don't want to fight with you. If I want to fight, I will fight the strongest one. You stinky monk and stinky bald donkey, give it to me. Go away. Li Shuwen looked at the monk in front of him at this time, with a look of boredom on his face. He really didn't want to get involved with OU2. Ning. Ha 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 ha, donor, I have already said that you are destined to be my Buddha, and the poor monk will not let you go so easily. You should go back with me and convert to Buddhism, and work hard to carry forward the spirit of my Buddhism. The monk in front of him did not show any bored expression, he still spoke very peacefully. Gungingan, you are such a dogskin plaster. You don't leave no matter how fast you are. It really annoys me. Get out of here. I don't want to be rough with you here. Li Shuwen's impatient expression on the hunter became more and more obvious at this time. He just looked at Di Yin in front of him, his eyes full of longing. The blood in his body was constantly rushing, and he seemed to have had a premonition that the opponent in front of him was very powerful. Donor, I told you that you were destined to be my Buddha. At this time, the monk next to him came up again, with the look on his face still very peaceful. As big as your grandma, you really deserve a beating. If that's the case, then I'll cripple you first, and then I'll beat him away too. After Li Shuwen heard this sentence, he had completely lost his mind. A ferocious smile appeared on his face at this moment, and his fists were clenched tightly. His figure instantly disappeared from the spot, and this punch directly hit the monk in front of him. At that moment, he immediately disappeared on the spot, and a huge circular pit suddenly appeared in the area where he had just stood. Li Shuwen's punch just now could be said to be very powerful. Such a powerful destructive power. As expected, donor, you should convert to Buddhism and look after my Buddhist home and courtyard. After seeing Li Shuwen's power, the monk said excitedly. Emperor Yin, who was in the sky at this time, did not pay attention to the battle situation of these four people at this moment. His eyes crossed many obstacles and met Su Han. What an incredible guy. He didn't change his expression even when Mount Tai collapsed. This guy can lead so many monsters. He really has the strength. Emperor Yin also thought secretly in his heart at this time, and his heart suddenly arose. This guy is not simple. It seems like he has seen something. Su Han thought to himself. This kid is indeed not simple. He has a very ancient bloodline in his body, and it is very powerful. It can be said that this kid has even greater strength. Maybe we haven't seen it yet. Ao Zhan spoke inappropriately in Su Han's sea of A consciousness at this time. Yes, I didn't expect you to see it so easily. It seems that you are still somewhat useful. Su Han said in his heart. Are you kidding me? I'm more useful than you think. You have to think about who just saved you from danger. Now that I have obtained this Dragon Ball, you can do anything in this ancient burial god realm. Gone. Ao Zhan said in a very arrogant tone. The moment the hot breath and the cold breath collided with each other, the entire area was filled with fog. At this moment, half of Li Wushang's body is covered with ice, and the Yanling in front of him is ignited with flames. His long fiery red hair is also constantly flying at this moment. His whole body it was like the god of fire descending. You are very interesting. I don't need that ball of fire anymore. I must defeat you today. Only by defeating you can I leave with peace of mind. Yanling sneered. Both each other, but you are a little weaker than I thought. I thought you were so arrogant when you first came in, so you must be a little weak, but I didn't expect that no matter how strong you are, you can only do this. Li Wuxiang had a look of ridicule on his face at this time. He was taunting him in such a big way just to make the other party lose his mind. Generally, people who practice fire-attributed exercises will be more or less disturbed by fire energy, and their temper will naturally be more severe. Just a few words of taunting during the battle might instantly set him on fire. After losing his mind, it is easy to reveal flaws. In this case, he can find the opponent's weaknesses and then defeat them one by one. After saying this, Yan Ling in front of him had a good temper, but veins were popping up on his forehead at this moment. He gritted his teeth and spoke. Okay, very good. You are much more courageous than I thought. You are the first person who dares to provoke me like this. Come out, Xuanchen Mie. Yan Ling sneered at this time, and suddenly a phoenix cry came. Then, a fire phoenix appeared in the world, and a fire phoenix actually guarded behind Yan Ling. Interesting, you actually have this heaven and earth spiritual fire. It seems that this time you can finally let me recognize your strength. Li Wuxiang said with a smile. Although Li Wuxiang remained calm on the surface, he was already a little shocked in his heart. Because the aura of heaven and earth spiritual fire in front of you is very terrifying, even if it is compared with the Nirvana Dragon Flame just snatched from the Nirvana Dragon King, it is only a hair's breadth away. Although Li Wuxiang also felt that this ball of flame was not perfect, its power was also extremely terrifying. Although Li Wuxiang also knew that the person in front of him did not obtain such a powerful power by himself, no matter how he obtained it, the aura that was now attached to his body was extremely terrifying. Really? But you are still far behind me, Yan Ling sneered. At this time, Su Han, who was standing in front of Di Yin with his eyes locked in the sky, spoke slowly. Why don't you come over and give it a try? You are the only person I can't see through. You are their leader. Why don't you stand up and set an example for them? Isn't it the same for you? You seem to be the strongest among them. After all, when these guys look at you, their eyes are full of fear, but aren't you also standing on this? Do you want to compete with a clam and get a profit? Su Han said with a smile. Ha 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 ha, I have been in the world for so long, and this is the first time I have seen such an interesting person like you. But what you got this time is not trivial. For me, I can take it or not, but the others behind me won't give up so easily, Di Yin said. Really? Then I really have to thank you, Su Han smiled. What? There's obviously going to be a fight, but why do you two the strongest say that you don't want to fight? This is meaningless. I'm still prepared to watch the show. The Taoist priest next to him suddenly lost all interest at this moment and complained without hesitation. It seemed that he felt very helpless that the two of them didn't want to do anything, but he spoke again the next second. But it's quite interesting to see a few other people fighting with each other. After all, these guys also have some tricks up their sleeves. You're such an unpredictable guy. Di Yin looked at the path in front of him with a dull expression on his face, but Su Han could see a hint of fear in his dull eyes. It seems that he is not simple at all. He can actually make this guy look fearful. This guy seems to be hiding something very deep. Su Han thought to himself. Little Taoist priest, since you have no intention of fighting for it, just watch it carefully from the sidelines. Just treat this scene as if I invited you to watch it. Su Han said. That's natural. Whoever gets the spiritual things in the world belongs to the same person. Pindao also agrees with this. These good things belong to those who are capable. But Pindao knows that his blessings are shallow, so this thing is still given to him. It's better for you, just watch from the side. A. The little Taoist priest sat aside very wisely and expressed his opinion. The battle between Shen Mo and Quan Ming has entered a fierce stage. They can only see Shen's sword flying faster and faster. The golden sword light is constantly flying in the battlefield, and the sword flower dazzled everyone. This extremely fast swordsmanship made Quan Mingdu in front of him passively defensive. He could only rely on his own blood to continuously recover from his injuries. At this moment, he said with an irritable look in his eyes, I've had enough of you. The true form of the blood demon. Quan Ming in front of him roared angrily at this time. His body underwent tremendous changes. 2 huge devil horns grew out of his forehead, and his body began to grow larger and larger, even to the point where the pair of terrifying and dark bat-like wings on his back fully expanded. His eyes, which had been closed tightly, slowly opened, and his red eyes were filled with murderous intent, making people intimidating. At this time, Shen Mo also had a look of fear on his face, and he could feel the danger. As he approached, this guy seemed to have undergone a remarkable change. It looks like he's in trouble. This guy is ready to use his strength, but it's not that easy. I won't let you reverse the situation so easily. Silence's eyes gradually turned cold and he said. Interesting, it's really interesting. Pindao has never seen such a fierce battle scene since he came out of the mountain. This trip is really worth it. The Taoist priest next to him also said very excitedly at this time. He looked like someone watching the fun, but he watched it with gusto. The people who had just taken action were almost as powerful as fire and water, and Li Shuwen also began to rush towards the monk in front of him crazily. The attacks like heavy rain continued to fall, but the monk still dealt with it calmly as if he was a normal person. This calm look made Li Shu in front of him very angry. You guys really make me a little angry, Li Shuwen said. The donor still has the blood of alien beasts, and his body is so powerful. He should have become the protector of my Buddhist sect. How about taking refuge in my Buddha? As long as he takes refuge in my Buddha, the donor will definitely become more powerful. The monk in front of me still persuaded him earnestly. You are really annoying. You really make me a little impatient. I want to tear you into pieces, but before that I want to tear your mouth to pieces first. Li Shuwen said angrily. Donor, you've got it. Everything in the world has spirituality. How can you talk about life and death? The monk in front of him clasped his hands together at this moment and said very piously. At this time, the Buddha's light on his body seemed to become more dazzling, and the Buddha nature in his body seemed to purify everything in the world. Even Li Shuwen's expression in front of him was a little dull at this moment. Damn bald donkey, you have completely annoyed me, Li Shuwen said. Immediately afterwards, his pupils gradually changed to another color. The cyan pupils filled him with a sense of oppression at this moment, and the muscles on his body began to bulge continuously. A bloodline from ancient times seemed to be gradually awakening in his body. His body was still growing taller, and at this time, the brutal murderous intent in Li Shuwen's eyes was no longer concealed. His speed became faster and faster, and in an instant he was in front of the monk, and struck his body directly with a palm. The monk didn't seem to have expected this situation, but in just an instant, his body was punched and flew backwards, hitting the ground hard, and the surroundings were filled with smoke. This damn bald ass is finally clean. I really want to tear your mouth apart completely so that you can keep silent. Li Shuwen rarely felt relaxed and seemed to enjoy the feeling of tranquility. After the smoke dissipated, a burst of Buddha light suddenly appeared in front of him, and a huge Buddha shadow appeared behind the monk. The huge Buddha shadow stood on the ground, and the holy golden light seemed to make everything in the world lose its color. But in the blink of an eye, the originally holy golden light suddenly changed into something else. Only the kind figure of the Buddha was seen. At this moment, his face was exposed with fangs and his body was completely black. The monk standing in front of him also changed his appearance at this time. Sometimes he was illuminated by Buddha light, and sometimes he was surrounded by demonic light. What the hell is this guy doing? Is this schizophrenia? Why does he change his appearance after a while? Li Shuwen's originally unintelligent head seemed even more confused at this time. This was the first time he had seen a person who could continuously change between these two forms in an instant. It's no wonder it's the evil Buddha Jingchun. It looks like this guy is about to go on a killing spree. Di Yin frowned slightly at this time, with a dull expression on his face as he spoke. This guy is quite interesting. Sometimes the demonic light surrounds him, and sometimes the Buddha's light shines everywhere. Logically speaking, if a person who practices Buddhism is contaminated with demonic nature, he will definitely become a demon and become an evil demon. But this guy is still able to maintain his Buddha nature. The Buddha nature in his body seemed to be fighting against the demonic nature. Su Han touched his chin and looked at the scene in front of him with interest. Donor, you are trying to force the young monk to go on a killing spree. If that's the case, then I won't say anything more to you. The evil Buddha Jingchun in front of him had an evil smile on his face. At this moment, his face had completely lost the peaceful look before. Now he had completely reduced to a bunch of demons. He could only see the Buddha shadow behind him, which was half golden light and half magic light. Sure enough, this guy is still so feared. This guy is still so strong now. The name of this evil Buddha is indeed not in vain. Quan Ming next to him showed a sneer on his face and said slowly. He is such a stubborn guy. He has resisted for so long and still not been assimilated by the demonic nature. What a pity. If he is completely demonized, then I really want to make friends with him. Quan Ming felt a little pity. He still looked forward to Jingchun being assimilated by the devil. It's not okay to be distracted during the battle. After all, my sword will not let you have such a chance to be distracted. Silently looked at Quan Ming in front of him, who seemed to be looking away, which made him feel offended. After all, the two of them were fighting, and this guy actually dared to take the time to look elsewhere, and he didn't pay attention to him at all. Inside. This sword directly pierced Quan Ming's arm in front of him. Quan Ming also felt a tearing pain at this time, and the golden sword energy that was as fast as lightning seemed to swim through his meridians. He also paid the price for his carelessness. At this time, he roared angrily, and the demonic energy in his body instantly rushed towards Silence in front of him, as if to tear Silence into pieces, but Silence could not let him succeed so easily. He only saw he pulled out the sword in his hand and ran away immediately. Then he summoned the demonic energy around him, seeming to want to repair the injury on his arm. Soon his arm returned to its original shape, but the injury on his arm was repaired, but he could feel a faint trace of sword energy wandering through his 8 extraordinary meridians, which caused a lot of damage to him. Impact. Mortal, you are very good. What you said is great, but you can actually hurt me. You really made me a little unhappy. A ferocious look appeared on Quan Ming's face. At this moment, the energy in his body had reached its peak. I saw the powerful demonic energy rushing out of him instantly, and even the sky was covered by his magic weapon. The originally bright earth was now covered in shadows due to the spread of this demonic energy. I told you not to be distracted when fighting me, otherwise you will pay the price for your ant, and this is your end. Facing Quan Ming's anger in front of him, Silence didn't panic at all, but instead laughed at Feng. Very good, very good. It seems that I have been underestimated by this insect like you. Quan Ming sneered. The next second the demonic energy on his body became even more terrifying, and then he slowly pulled out a dark demonic sword from his back. What made people feel frightened was that the magic sword was pulled out from his spine. The moment that magic sword appeared, gusts of dark wind blew across the entire world. At this moment, the entire world was enveloped in darkness. Seeing Quan Ming in front of him, he seemed to be angry, and Shen Mo also had a solemn look on his face. Are you coming? At this time, Shen Mo clenched the golden sword in his hand, his eyes full of fear. He knew that the next step would be a fight to the death. The sword he just struck could be said to have completely angered the guy in front of him. On the other side, Yan Ling and Li Wuxiang were fighting each other at this moment. The area where they were fighting was filled with white mist, and Yan Ling summoned his spiritual fire, Xuantian Phoenix Fire. At this time, the Xuantian Phoenix Fire behind him flew into the sky. He kept waving his wings, and the feathers stained with flames began to fall downwards. Facing the scorching flames, Li Wuxiang also felt a hint of crisis at this time because he found that the flames brought by the feathers dropped by Xuanwei Phoenix Fire seemed to be able to limit his ice power. He could only temporarily avoid its sharp edge and keep retreating, but this also made Yan Ling in front of him become more and more courageous. With the Xuantian Phoenix Fire, it can be said that the situation of the battle was completely reversed. Why? Why are you so embarrassed? Didn't you say you wanted to take my life? Why are you running away now? A ferocious smile appeared on Yan Ling's face, and he only saw him wave his hand, and the Zhan Tianwo continued to pursue Ji Wuxiang. Li Wuxiang seemed to have reached a blind corner at this time. The Fire Phoenix speaking and doing the Xuantian Phoenix Fire in front of him had locked onto him. He only saw a huge amount of blazing heat slowly gathering in his mouth, and the fireball began to erupt from his mouth. When he spit it out, the terrifying red-hot energy seemed to burn Li Wuxiang's body to pieces. Seeing that there was no way to retreat, Li Wuxiang in front of him had no choice but to fight. After seeing Li Wuxiang forcefully attack him, Yan Ling's face showed a look of mad excitement. You are really an idiot. Do you dare to fight with me at this level? Do you think your ice power can work on my Xuantian Phoenix? No matter how powerful you are, it's just spiritual power. I am the spiritual fire born from heaven and earth. Yan Ling had already seen the scene of Li Wuxiang being burned to ashes by his Xuantian Phoenix fire. He only saw a burst of gunpowder smoke slowly coming out in front of him, mixed with the continuously evaporating water vapor. At this moment, he had already anticipated that Li Wuxiang in front of him would be seriously injured even if he did not die. It can be said that few people in the world can block the move just now. Even Di Yin from above had to put in a lot of effort, at least in his opinion. Di Yin, who was next to him, also looked at Li Wuxiang with a dull expression. It seems that the battle here is going to end early, and the people on your side seem to be in trouble. Di Yin looked at Su Han in front of him from a distance and said. It seems that the battle has already been decided. The person under your command seems to be only at this level, but if he can force me to use the spiritual fire of heaven and earth, this guy is quite capable. His cultivation on this ice path is considered very powerful. Yan Ling stood with his hands behind his back, and the look on his face became very arrogant. But he hadn't been proud for long, when a familiar voice came. That familiar voice was filled with frost, and he could only hear the owner of that voice speaking slowly. Aren't you a little too proud? With that kind of attack just now, do you think you can defeat me so easily? Li Wuxiang spoke slowly, and every word seemed to make people feel a chill that penetrated their hearts. Hearing these words, Yan Ling, who was just in front of him, had veins popping up on his forehead, his face gradually became distorted, and he spoke. Does this guy have to fight against me? Isn't it better to just admit defeat? Does he have to force me to take the initiative to kill you? Haha, admit defeat. Why do you have to admit defeat? You think you can win me, don't you? At this time, Li Wuxiang slowly stepped out of the smoke, only to see that the ground he passed had turned into ice. Even the air on this volcano has become cold. Seeing Li Wuxiang in front of him, he stamped his right foot, and the volcano was immediately frozen. The originally blazing volcano had turned into a cold iceberg, and everything was covered in ice. Di Yin's eyes narrowed slightly at this time. Looking at Li Wuxiang in front of him, he seemed to have some bad premonitions. It seemed that he had seen the wrong person for the first time. What an interesting group of guys, Di Yin said. But I'm more curious, what kind of strength do you have that can lead them so that they can listen to you so sincerely and follow you with such peace of mind? You must not be an easy guy. Di Yin looked at Su Han in front of him, and his mind was filled with thoughts. However, Su Han's expression in front of him was still very calm, and he could not see any panic. He was as calm as an ancient well. Ha 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 ha, I really didn't expect that I really met an interesting person this time. Yan Ling clenched his fists, and slowly Panasonic's originally ferocious expression immediately relaxed, but his eyes were full of coldness. The realm of extreme ice. Li Wuxiang sneered, and then the ground was covered with frost, and one after another ice spikes began to rush towards Yan Ling in front of him. Yan Ling also quickly evaded at this time. Everything he passed seemed to turn into ice. The ice seemed to spread rapidly towards his feet, trying to control his people. But no matter how fast he ran, the extremely terrifying ice caught up with him and froze his feet directly. At this time, the flames on his body burned immediately, completely melting the ice under his feet. He still has some means. As far as he is concerned, the ball of heaven and earth spiritual fire and Xuantian Phoenix are no longer something that can be dealt with by the ice wings formed by ordinary spiritual power. Do you want to use this method to control me? You are still too young. Do you think you are my opponent? I tell you, now you can only look up to me. You are not qualified to beat me. Yan Ling sneered. At this time, Yan Ling in front of him showed a sneer on his face, and the Xuantian Phoenix fire behind him also exerted force again, followed by a phoenix chirp. The iceberg, which was originally covered with ice, began to melt rapidly at this moment, and the top of the iceberg had been burned into steam by the flames. Not even a trace of moisture was left, everything turned into a white breeze. Ha 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 ha, boy, I admit that you have some strength, but the gap between you and me is really too big, so you can just admit defeat obediently. At this time, Yan Ling thought that he had completely controlled the situation. He thought that he was at the top and that he had completely controlled this battle. Xuantian Phoenix fire, burn it to ashes. Just use the strongest move. I don't want to waste time with him anymore. I have no interest in playing with this kid anymore. I want to fight with him. Let us play with the guy next to you who looks very powerful. A Yan Ling sneered. The phoenix transformed from Xuantian phoenix fire behind him seemed to understand what he meant at this time. He roared and immediately rushed towards Li Wuxiang in front of him. Li Wuxiang sneered at this time, and saw a blue spear immediately appearing in his hand. That spear was constantly gathering the power of ice in the world. The spear was also covered with frost at this moment, and the power of the ice was all concentrated on the sharpest point of the spear, and then Ji Wuxiang knocked the spear out. The spear immediately collided with the fire phoenix in front of it, and the huge explosion in just that moment attracted everyone present. Even the 3 people on the side stopped shooting in their hands. Fight, look at the battle situation here. It's really amazing. It seems that Master Yan Shi's cultivation is getting better and better, and his control over the spiritual fire of heaven and earth is getting stronger and stronger. At that time, the Jingchun monk stopped what he was doing. At this time, the ferocious look on his face completely disappeared, and he returned to his previous peaceful look. Li Shuwen also frowned slightly at this time. Although he could not control his reason well now, the terrifying aura just now also attracted his attention. He seemed to realize that Li Wuxiang seemed to have encountered someone there. Big trouble. At this time, Li Wuxiang's whole body had been severely injured by the flames. He only saw that his upper body clothes were completely destroyed and his body was covered with scars. Blood was flowing from his mouth, his eyes were full of unwillingness, and the spear was completely broken. You dare to go against me? Don't you know what this is in my hand? This is the spiritual fire born from heaven and earth. Do you think you can compete with this world? Yan Ling sneered and looked at the person in front of him arrogantly. Finally, he put away his Xuantian phoenix fire, and the fire phoenix behind him immediately turned into a cluster of flames. I have already said that when it comes to controlling fire, my Yan clan is one of the best. Even the heavens in the world may not be able to compare with us. Although you have a very strong talent in the power of ice, you've come a long way, but so what, can you win over me? Yan Ling had become a winner at this time. He looked down at Li Wuxiang in front of him. The victor's posture was undoubtedly revealed. At this moment, he felt that his life seemed to have reached its peak, so he slowly stretched out his hand, pointed at Su Han in front of him, and said, "Now that I have killed your man, is it your turn next?" At this time, Wang Tianwan immediately stood up, his eyes full of anger, and said, "Hey, I'm still here. You don't treat me as a human being, do you?" As soon as he said this, Su Han in front of him stretched out his hand to stop him and said, "Don't worry, it's not over yet. You guy, what are you talking nonsense about? Is there anyone here who can fight? You're talking about the guy in front of you? The guy in front of you is too weak, and I don't even have the interest to fight him." Yan Ling said with a mocking look on his face. "I'm talking about the person opposite you who you haven't defeated yet," Su Han said. After hearing this sentence, Yan Ling in front of him laughed and said, "What nonsense are you talking about? I originally thought you were a capable person, but I didn't expect that even you would say such bastard things. Have you not understood the situation yet? Your subordinates, this guy has been completely defeated by me." After he just finished speaking, he saw Li Wuxiang in front of him with a hint of ice in his breath. His eyes have completely turned white, surrounded by the ultimate meaning of ice. No, it has now evolved into the exclusive power of law. At this time, Li Wuxiang in front of him waved his hand, and there was a huge change immediately between the sky and the earth. He only saw the originally clear sky, and now it was filled with heavy snow. The originally hot weather, at this moment, the temperature dropped to extreme zone. This sudden change made Yan Ling in front of him a little dumbfounded. He didn't expect this guy to be so tenacious. His 2 attacks just now didn't even defeat him. This guy was still able to stand up. But this time seemed a little different from last time. The white light in this guy's eyes made him feel a little frightened. "Damn it, you damn guy. What are you doing? Are you pretending to be a ghost? I don't believe I can't kill you." Yan Ling was gradually losing his patience because of what Li Wuxiang was doing again and again. Bingshuo all things. Li Wuxiang waved his hand in front of him. At this moment, the snowflakes all over the sky began to fall continuously, and only the gently falling snowflakes were seen falling at an extremely fast speed. Although it looked soft, the falling snowflakes made Yan Ling in front of him instinctively feel great danger. Even Emperor Yin, who was in the sky, had a solemn expression at this time and hurriedly left the area where Li Wuxiang was. The white light in Li Wuxiang's eyes still did not dissipate. He only waved his hand and the snowflakes in the sky began to fall continuously, and the speed became faster and faster. Yan Ling in front of him seemed to realize something at this time, and he immediately summoned his heaven and earth spiritual fire Xuantian phoenix fire. The Xuantian phoenix fire stood behind him and turned into a huge fire phoenix. The fire phoenix began to flap its wings continuously, trying to resist Li Wuxiang. This looked very dangerous. Move, but how could the snowflakes falling all over the sky be as simple as Yan Ling imagined? I only saw the snowflakes falling slowly all over the sky, obviously as light as goose feathers, but when it fell slowly, when it landed on the body of the fire phoenix, suddenly, the snowflakes transformed by Xuantian phoenix. The formed fire phoenix immediately let out a heart-rending roar of pain. At this time, Yan Ling on the side finally realized that something was wrong. It seemed that the snowflakes flying all over the sky were not that simple. Just for a moment, the sky was filled with snowflakes, and the surrounding temperature was getting lower and lower. This sudden change finally attracted the attention of Fang Dian. Oh, this guy is a bit interesting. He can actually reach this level. It seems that the spiritual fire of heaven and earth may not be able to suppress him, Dian said. Just as he expected, he only saw the fire phoenix transformed from the Xuantian phoenix, and immediately returned to its original shape under the suppression of the snowflakes in the sky, turning into a cluster of weak sparks. It seemed that half of it was about to be completely extinguished, but at this time Yan Ling immediately put away the Xuantian phoenix fire in his hand. With a look of resentment on his face, he spoke. Who are you? Why do you have such a method? Logically speaking, this is the spiritual fire of heaven and earth, and no method can extinguish it. But Li Wuxiang in front of him seemed to be possessed. He had no expression, and his pair of glowing white eyes had no expression. He just spoke slowly. The critical point of extreme coldness. In just that moment, the snowflakes in the sky became bigger and bigger. After a while, the originally scorching volcano had completely turned into an iceberg. The temperature around here also began to drop rapidly, and Yan Ling in front of him also felt a hint of danger. Not good. Yan Ling's tense nerves and the snowflakes in the sky made him realize that there seemed to be danger approaching him. At this time, he immediately wanted to escape, but it seemed that it was already too late. All he saw was that the snowflakes all over the sky seemed to have surrounded him, trapping him in his own circle. It's over. What on earth is this kid? Why does he have such an attack method? This is impossible, he can't have such strength, and he was beaten by me just now. How could it become so powerful all of a sudden? Yan Ling's eyes were full of unwillingness, and he spoke with a very angry expression. At this moment, he felt that all the spiritual energy in his body was slowly being frozen. This put a look of horror on his face. Under this situation, if his strength was still sealed, then he would be a piece of meat on the chopping board, ready to be slaughtered. Li Wuxiang in front of him just waved his hand and saw that the snowflakes in the sky suddenly began to fall in one direction under his control, and slowly turned into a storm. The storm was mixed with the snowflakes falling all over the sky. This spectacular scene made everyone look shocked. Yan Ling, who is at the center of this storm, is suffering unspeakably at this moment. If he was given another chance, he would say nothing to Li Wuxiang in front of others. Who knew that this guy suddenly went crazy and could have such powerful means? He was clearly sure of victory just now. Stop. I give up. Stop it now. Yan Ling spoke in horror at this time. He knew that if he didn't recognize him anymore, he would probably be frozen into an ice sculpture in the next second, and then blown to pieces by the howling wind. But Li Wuxiang in front of him had no intention of stopping at all. He only saw that the spiritual power in his hands was gathering faster and faster, and the storm was getting stronger and stronger. He felt the spiritual power gradually being frozen in his body, and the look on his face was also very painful at this moment. You forced me to do this. The god of fire appears. He was filled with anger, and all he saw was that the endless spiritual power in his body seemed to be burning, and the bloodline from ancient times was slowly beginning to awaken. A powerful and fiery aura instantly caused everyone present to stop what they were doing. Because the move this guy just made was obviously at the cost of burning the bloodline in his body in exchange for some of the deepest power in his body. The consequence of this is that your own bloodline will be damaged. But at this point, Yan Ling couldn't care less. Now he has to use this method. Because he knew that if he remained indecisive, his life would be lost here. Bloodline and other things, as long as you live, you can make up for it sooner or later, but if your life is gone, then you really have nothing. At this time, the volcano that was originally covered by ice and snow returned to its previous scene, and the hot and violent aura gradually spread to the entire mountain and river. At this time, Yan Ling's whole body was covered with flames, and his fiery red hair was flying in the wind. At this time, Yan Ling's whole body was covered with flames, and his long fiery red hair was flying in the wind. What makes people even more frightened is seeing him floating in the sky like a ball of souls, with endless flames underneath him. You are such a damn guy. You actually forced me to use this trick. I will never let you go. Yan Ling roared angrily, and every roar caused the volcano beneath him to sway. You must know that using such a form will consume his blood power, but now the arrow is on the string and he has to shoot, so he can only hold his nose and admit it. But he would never let go of the guy who pushed him to this point. Looking at Yan Ling in front of him who was out of trouble, Li Wuxiang showed a look of doubt on his face, and then he waved his hand. Frost and Ice Abyss. A more terrifying aura spread out from his body, and he waved his hand and an ice abyss appeared in front of everyone, and a giant came out of the ice abyss. The giant covered in ice held a spear in his hand and slowly walked towards Yan Ling in front of him. But now Yan Ling has already given up everything. He wants to burn to pieces the guy in front of him who forced him to this point. No matter how powerful he becomes, he has now activated the power of his bloodline. He is now invincible. He firmly believes that he can turn everything in front of him to ashes. All fires are unified because of the pillar of fire. At this time, Yan Ling roared angrily, and he could only see him inserting his hands deeply into the ground, and the hot and domineering breath slowly penetrated into the ground, until the ground could no longer withstand the high temperature. Completely shattered. A terrifying and huge pillar of flame immediately rose from the ground. This terrifying and huge pillar of flame seemed to want to completely burn the frost giant in front of him who was slowly walking towards him to ashes. The frost giant finally discovered the huge and blazing energy under its feet. It lowered its head, with a look of doubt on its face. He raised his terrifying big feet and stepped forward. He actually stepped on the pillar of flames. But he himself was also seriously injured. He could feel that one of his feet had been damaged. The terrifying and hot breath made the 10 feet he had just butterfly begin to slowly melt. At this time, the frost giant also frowned. He immediately rushed forward, picked up the spear in his hand, and seemed to want to kill the opponent with one shot. But how could Yan Ling in front of him do what he wished? He said with a sneer on his face. Do you really think you have the ability to send me to my death? You are too naive. Since one attack can't kill you, then I will risk my life and fight once today. All he saw was a scarlet light flashing in his eyes, an increasingly powerful aura emanating from his body, and a Vulcan shadow actually appeared behind him. The moment the Vulcan attraction appeared, the whole world seemed to be melted, and the huge figure eclipsed the entire Kaidi. The moment he appeared, everyone was stunned, and everyone felt threatened. Yan Ling in front of him was trampling the ground angrily at this moment, and the Vulcan phantom was doing the same. He gathered all the strength in his body into his hands, and still watched it hit the ground. Dozens of pillars of flame spurted out from the ground, and the frost giant in front of him had his movements very restricted. I saw him rushing forward desperately, as if he wanted to fight to the death with the opponent. But when the huge frost giant arrived at Vulcan's side, his body was also mangled by the pillar of flames spurting out. His body became extremely mutilated. The originally tall and majestic body was burned by the terrifying flames, leaving only one leg and one arm. Even half of the whole body was missing, and at this time everyone looked at the battle between these two people with shocked expressions. No, these guys are still fighting. If they fight to this extent, they will lose their lives. These two guys are really crazy. Although Li Shuwen's biggest characteristic in normal battles is that he doesn't care about his life, but now he saw such a scene, his face was still a little surprised. His ferocious face was stunned for a moment, and the Jingchun monk next to him couldn't help but be very shocked at this moment. Amitabha, I didn't expect that such a small scene would allow the Yan donor to use all the power of his bloodline. Even the shadow of the fire god has appeared. It seems that these two people have spent a lot of money this time. The best result for them this time is that they will both lose. Monk Jingchun said with a compassionate look on his face. Come on, you bald donkey, you are still here pretending to be compassionate to me. What kind of virtues do you, a bald donkey, have? Don't you know yourself? Li Shuwen looked at the pious and compassionate expression on his face, with a hint of disdain on his face. Donor, you will be punished by God if you mock monks. Instead of being angry about this, the monk said to him with a peaceful face. But in the next second, his expression immediately changed. His unique evil side suddenly spoke with a ferocious expression. Shut up. If you say one more word or interrupt me again, I will twist off your head and drink your blood. Seeing his sudden change of expression, Li Shuwen was also startled, and then said with an angry look on his face. You damn bald donkey, how dare you scare your grandpa and me? Someone, come and see who ripped off whose head. As he said that, he immediately rushed forward and got entangled with the Jingchun monk. But when the Jingchun monk's Buddha nature and demonic nature existed in one, his physical strength also began to grow continuously, since he could reach the point of competing with Li Shuwen. At this time, the frost giant with a broken body clenched the spear in his hand, his eyes filled with murderous intent, and he stabbed Yan Ling directly in front of him. The Vulcan shadow behind Yan Ling looked at the frost giant and roared angrily, as the endless fire erupted from his body. The frost giant's spear and the last pillar of flame spit out by the Vulcan shadow began to collide with each other. The power generated by these two has eclipsed the entire world, and even the place where they are located has experienced serious turmoil. After a burst of white light dissipated, everyone saw only smoke in front of them, the collision of fire and ice. After the smoke dissipated, everyone only saw the two people lying on the ground. Li Wuxiang in front of him was pale, and there was no trace of spiritual power in his body. They saw that the power in his dantian had been drained, and the one opposite him Yan Ling was also seriously injured. His face was pale, and there was still blood in his mouth. If you walked closer, you could feel that his breathing was even a little weak, and the blood vessels in his body had been severely damaged. Looks like the fight between these two guys is over. Su Han walked forward slowly and stood beside Li Wuxiang. You guys really surprised me that I can actually use this kind of strength. Li Wuxiang's eyes widened at this time, full of unwillingness. He wanted to urge his body to get up. Okay, you don't have anything to do here, just have a good sleep. Su Han looked at Li Wuxiang's movements and said with a look of helplessness on his face. Yan Ling next to him had completely fallen into a coma at this moment, and he no longer had any consciousness. If we follow the logic, you really have won this battle, but the fact that you put in so much effort proves that that guy is very powerful. Su Han walked over slowly, looked at Yan Ling who was already lying on the ground and said. Brother, since he has already lost, there is no need for you to cause trouble for him anymore. After all, the two of them are fighting fair. There will be winners and losers in this battle. It's wrong for you to come here and reap the benefits. Bar. Di Yin immediately stood up and said that he thought Su Han was going to do harm to Yan Ling in front of him. Ha ha ha, you look down on me. I'm not that despicable, but this guy did interest me a little. I didn't expect it. Su Han said with a smile on his face. Really? That's the best. But this little brother next to you is not simple. He can actually achieve this level. Before, I thought he was bound to lose. After all, this guy is the leader of the Yan clan. Di Yin said. At the same time, his eyes narrowed slightly, and he had already seen that these people in front of him were definitely not simple. After all, being able to fight them to such an extent, it can even be said that Li Wuxiang on the opposite side had a slight upper hand, and at the last moment Yan Ling had completely lost consciousness, but Ji Wuxiang still held on for his last breath. This also means that the other party must be stronger than Yan Ling, but just such a person actually convinced Su Han in front of him, which also proves that the person standing in front of him is probably the most terrifying person in this group of people. This guy is really not good at it. To deal with such a person so badly, it depends on me. Li Shuwen looked at Li Wuxiang who had fallen to the ground with a smile on his face. At the same time, veins popped up on his forehead as he looked at the pure monk in front of him. You damn bald donkey, I really hate you. You talk so much all day long. Look at me, I will send you to the west with one punch. After saying that, Li Shuwen immediately rushed out. He was like a beast that had been out of the cage. His body was as fast as lightning, and this punch directly hit the body of the monk Jingchun in front of him. But what makes Li Shuwen feel strange is that there seems to be something blocking him in front of him. Usually his fist can't move any further. Monk Jingchun, who is only a palm away from his fist, still has a smile on his face at this time. But what makes people feel horrified is that his face turns into a very ferocious smile from time to time. Donor, you don't have to waste your efforts. Bastard, you really dare to take the initiative to attack me. At this moment, two different voices came at the same time, causing Li Shuwen in front of him to show a look of confusion, but after thinking about it, a wild smile appeared on his face. You're pretending to be a fool here. It's amazing to have two personalities. It's amazing to be able to speak two different languages, right? Look at how I've disabled you. As he spoke, Li Shuwen in front of him started to strike faster and faster, and the fists in his hands became harder and harder. The punches fell like raindrops one after another. But after fighting for a long time, he still couldn't make any further progress. It was as if the Jingchun monk in front of him had some magic weapon that blocked the distance between them, making every punch feel like it was hitting the air. Ha 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 ha, you bastard, you've beaten enough. Damn it, it's my turn next. I'm going to kill you bastard with my own hands. An evil smile appeared on Monk Jingchun's face, and then he immediately took action and a strange magic light suddenly appeared at Li Shuwen's feet. Li Shuwen immediately felt that something was wrong. He wanted to get away, but he found that the monk Jingchun in front of him slowly stretched out his hand and grabbed his arm. Li Shuwen just wanted to get out, but she found that the Jingchun monk who had just grabbed his arm was holding her tightly with his hands like iron pliers. She couldn't break free at all and could only let her body swallowed by that magic light. The magic light slowly climbed up his body, and he could only see Li Shuwen in front of him. the flesh in his body seemed to be squirming. At this time, he felt a very painful feeling, as if a knife was stirring around in his body. Li Shuwen instantly vomited blood, and even his eyes began to bleed. The monk Jingchun in front of him had a crazy smile on his face. Seeing Li Shuwen bathed in blood, he seemed to be laughing more and more crazily. He seemed to be unable to suppress the excitement in his heart. At this moment, he returned to normal, and only his separated hands were slowly clasped together. Li Shuwen in front of him immediately knelt on the ground, and he could feel that his internal organs seemed to have been severely damaged. Amitabha, donor, you are obsessed with the devil. You are too deeply possessed by the devil. Please follow me and convert to Buddhism to purify the devilish nature in your body. The Jingchun monk in front of him slowly stretched out a hand, with compassion in his eyes, and the golden Buddha's light became more and more dazzling on him. He seemed to be a kind person who helped the world in trouble. This state of mind made Li Shuwen in front of him seem to see a glimmer of light. He seemed to be in a daze, as if those words just now had brainwashed him, and he reached out his hand unconsciously. At this time, his eyes became very dull, but when his hand was placed on the hand of the monk Jingchun, his eyes became more and more confused. When he saw that Li Shuwen had stretched out his hand, a satisfied smile appeared on the face of the monk Jingchun in front of him. Donor, please turn back and convert to Buddhism, and come with me to the Western Paradise. Monk Jingchun smiled, his tone still peaceful. A very satisfied smile appeared on his face, so that the terrifying demon-like face behind his head also let out a very terrifying laugh. Master, you are right, this Western Paradise should indeed be visited, but the person who goes there is not me, it should be you. The eyes of Li Shuwen in front of him suddenly became clear, and a sneer appeared on his face. He only saw him grabbing the hand of the monk Jingchun in front of him and throwing him out directly. Then he pushed him hard to the ground and punched him on the head again and again. This sudden change made the monk Jingchun in front of him feel a little confused. He had just charmed Li Shuwen in front of him, and this guy stretched out his hands. How could his spell be ineffective immediately? You must know that your magic can be very deceptive to some smart people. But now it has no effect on such a stupid-looking person. This is simply an insult to him. I'll make you laugh. I'll make you laugh again. I'll make you white for a while and black for a while. Is it fun? You damn bastard. How dare you play with me like this? At this time, Li Shuwen firmly held down monk Jingchun in front of her and punched him hard one after another. This is a rare opportunity, and he will never let it go. The moment of beating the drowned dog passed quickly. At this time, Li Shuwen in front of him realized that his last punch could not hit the ground at all. The Jingchun monk had already come across from him, and he had also put on that sinister, terrifying and evil face. You damn bastard, monk Jingchun said with a sinister look on his face. It's you who should be called a bastard. On the surface, you look glamorous, but in fact, your hands are stained with blood. So are all you Buddhists like this? How hypocritical. Seeing that her prey had completely run away, Li Shuwen stood up, dusted herself off, and said. He did not hide his disdain at all. He could only say that he looked down upon people like monk Jingchun. These Buddhist bald donkeys claim to save the world and save people, but they are all cannibals who eat people without spitting out their bones. The Jingchun monk in front of him has both demonic and Buddhist natures. The two are combined together. It can be said that although this guy has a strong talent in Buddhism, he cannot hide the pure demonic nature in him. This shows that he did a lot of bad things to become like this. You damn thing, I'm going to tear you to pieces. Donor, if you slander me again, the Buddha will be unhappy. These two sounds appeared on the Jingchun monk at the same time, which made people feel very awkward, but also made people feel very strange. You are truly a monster, but that's fine. If I beat you all over the place, you won't make that weird sound anymore. You still deserve a beating. Li Shuwen's face flashed with excitement and she sneered. As he spoke, he only saw his huge body. The power of continuously shrinking the Kui Niu bloodline had been fully stimulated by him, and two horns appeared on the top of his head. The white tattoo appeared on his body, making his entire body look more powerful. There were even electric arcs around him. Every time he took a step, there was a loud thunder in the sky, and even a few light raindrops fell faintly. Moments later, these light raindrops suddenly turned into a downpour. This sudden change made the monk Jingchun in front of him look a little confused. Hey, Death Apostle Donkey, let's feel the anger of the beast like a child. Li Shuwen sneered. As he spoke, his figure immediately disappeared from the spot, and he saw a bolt of lightning suddenly falling from the sky, striking directly on the body of the monk Jingchun. That supreme Yang Zigang power greatly affected the demonic nature in his body. He made no sound of pain, and at the same time, the demonic nature of body supremacy dissipated a lot, but the sinister look on his face became particularly obvious. Before he could react, he saw Li Shuwen holding the pair of huge horns above his head and directly hit the body of the Jingchun monk, pushing it hundreds of meters away. At the same time, a white force was gathering on his horns, with some electric arcs. After this terrifying force spread out, the Jingchun monk in front of him was immediately severely injured. The originally holy Chani had become shattered at this moment. His character seemed to have been severely injured. Only the look in his eyes could be seen, full of viciousness. He murmured, "The poor monk's cassock, the poor monk's cassock, the poor monk's cassock is torn." At this time, he seemed to be lost in thought, and there was a dazed look in his eyes. He seemed to be thinking about why his cassock was torn. He seemed to think of something, and immediately a look of pain appeared on his face, and he actually burst into tears on the spot. "The poor monk's cassock is torn. My cassock is torn. I am no longer a monk. It's not a long time ago. Those guys have kicked me out a long time ago. I no longer belong to them." The Jingchun monk's face immediately showed a look of anger and resentment. The endless demonic nature seemed to be suddenly trying his body, and the weak Buddha light on his body was slowly resisting. Of course, this was of no avail. All this changed dramatically when the cassock on his body began to become broken. At this time, his face became crazy, and the beads on his body slowly turned into hideous and terrifying skulls one after another. Moreover, the Zen staff in his hand began to slowly change at this time. The Zen staff turned out to be composed of a slender bone and a human head. Now he is dressed up like an evil ghost crawling out of hell, with his whole body decorated with human bones. Ha 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 ha, ha 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 ha. I am finally free, I have finally become a Buddha. The Jingchun monk in front of him seemed to be a different person at this time, or he had finally released his true nature. In other words, the demonic nature in his heart swallowed up his body, which made him a completely independent person now. Really, it's so complicated. Here and there, you were really troublesome.